The Blast from Our Past Network.
Hey everyone, co-host Corey here. I just wanted to take a quick second and say thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. Without you, Podcasting After Dark would not be possible. If you would like to help the show grow, please consider signing up at patreon.com/podcastingafterdark. You can also support the show by purchasing one of our awesome t-shirt designs on our merch store at podcastingafterdark.com, or by picking up a copy of 7 Winters Alone by David Irons on paperback, hardback, or Kindle. Just search for 7 Winters Alone on Amazon or click on the link in the show notes. A free way to help out is to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Those reviews are huge for us and really helps get the show in front of new listeners. Again, thank you all so much for the love and support you've given us over these past few years. It really means the world to us.
Lock your doors, close your windows, turn out your lights, for chills and thrills await you. It's time for Podcasting After Dark with your hosts, Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer. Stay with a friend, say your prayers as grisly ghouls close in to seal your doom. Tonight's episode, Zombie, starring Tisa Farrow, Ian McCulloch, and Al Cliver.
When there's no more room in Italy, the dead will take a sailboat to Manhattan by way of the Caribbean. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Podcasting After Dark. I am one half of the pad team proper, Corey, a.k.a. Sleazy C. Joined with me, as always, is my brother from another mother, Zach, the total snackage Schaefer. And this week, we are covering the seminal zombie Italian classic by Lucio Fulci, Zombie Flesh Eaters, a.k.a. Zombie 2, a.k.a. Zombie!
Wow. AKA Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things Part 2.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that, Zach, because, ladies and gentlemen, consider this a second half of that conversation. I kind of prioritized this movie after we talked Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, because we brought up a lot of similarities between the two and everything. So I thought it would be a good idea to sort of tackle this sooner rather than later. But before I get into my experience with Zombie, Zach, what is yours with this Lucio Fulci classic?
Well, let's see. I have my brother yet again to thank for probably freaking me out as a kid, seeing this box art at the video store, getting traumatized by it as a young lad, and then my brother forcing me to watch it and totally being grossed out and terrified all at the same time. I've probably seen it. Maybe I've watched it every, I want to say 5 to 10 years. I know that's a big gap in between, but I have definitely seen it many times. So this viewing was like icing on the cake for me. I'm so glad I didn't have to break it down, just simply from the fun standpoint of like being able to enjoy it and getting to talk about all the good, the bad, and everything in between.
The good, the bad, and the zany.
And the extremely long pauses in between things.
or the staring off into the distance, as Anne is wont to do the entire fucking movie.
Yes.
Yeah, dude, I love this movie. It's not my favorite Fulci film. My favorite is The Beyond.
Samers.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and we're gonna get to it eventually, but I figured we should probably tackle this one first. I feel like more people probably know this one, and I think as far as like a barrier of entry, I think this is probably one of the easier Fulci films to get into.
Well, yeah, I think so. It's also a groundbreaking film on many levels. It's influential on many levels, and kind of, I know it was I know we did movies in between, but I feel like we referenced it in Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. Yeah. It kind of just makes sense to do it on the heels of that movie. And man, I mean, it's definitely a movie we were not supposed to watch as kids, and dare I say, something probably most people wouldn't want to watch now based on the level of gore and terror.
Yeah. And as a kid, of course, I watched it for the gore and the copious amounts of nudity. But now,
I was waiting.
But now, I also watch it for its fantastic score by Fabio Frizzi and the other guy. I don't remember his name offhand, but Zach will talk all about it in a second. But what I really love about this movie is the way the zombies are portrayed.
Samers.
You know, as a stark contrast to Dawn of the Dead, and we will talk about that connection in a second. The zombies in this movie, they have their eyes closed. Almost every single one of them do, except for maybe like two. They have their eyes closed. Their heads are kind of looking down, and their arms are down by their side. This movie was always intended by the writer to be more akin to movies like White Zombie with Bela Lugosi and less akin to movies like Dawn of the Dead. But with the massive popularity of Dawn of the Dead, this movie was kind of retooled and quickly pushed out the door as Zombie 2, and that's Zombi, because Dawn of the Dead was played in Italy as Zombie. And Italy has this interesting trademark laws and stuff where it allows you to make sequels to pre-existing things, and it's very interesting. So technically in Italy, this is an official sequel to Dawn of the Dead, although Fulci said he didn't intend that to be such, and he says this is supposed to be more of a standalone thing. Now, that's kind of as far as I want to go into the history of this movie. It has a huge backstory to it, and I am no authority on the subject matter, and I know for a fact if I get something wrong, I'm going to get brutalized because that's just the way the internet works. So I implore you, if you enjoy this movie, there is buku amounts of YouTube videos and books and documentaries that you can watch to learn about Italian horror movies, Italian giallo movies. This is not a giallo film technically, although it is sort of in that same hemisphere because Lucio Fulci is also a giallo director, but this is not a giallo film.
And a Western director, too.
Yes. And so what I'm saying is there's a wealth of information out there that you guys can dig into if you want to learn more about Fulci and Zombie, a.k.a. Zombie Flesh Eaters, a.k.a. Zombie 2, a.k.a. Nightmare Island, which is what it was originally written as. So, and honestly, it would be a 3-hour podcast alone if we tried to talk about the whole entire history of Italian horror cinema.
Yeah, and if you want, you can go back to the archives of Podcasting After Dark and listen to the watch list that I did with David Irons, where we talked about our top 5 Italian horror films, and we expound upon giallo and zombie horror and Italian horror and horror and all that good stuff. So no one in that is called a horror, but go listen to that if you want a little bit more Italian love in your life. Love Italian style.
And if you have any further questions, just go hit up David Irons. He'll explain it all to you pretty much.
Yeah. I have this beautiful book. It's called I think it's called Beyond the Gates, I believe, or it's The Beyond or Beyond some. Anyways, it's the films of Lucio Fulci, and it's a beautiful coffee table book. That came out, I think Ibon Press might have put it out decades ago. Maybe almost 20 years ago. I think I got it at a Fangoria convention way back when. Anyways, beautiful history of Fulci's movies from westerns to horror, and everything in between.
And while we're talking about Fulci, and we'll get into his filmography and everything, you said The Beyond is also your favorite one of his films. Is he your favorite Italian horror director?
Beyond is definitely my favorite Fulci film. Felch. But and then on the cover of that beautiful book is a shot from the Beyond when they're in like the sand dunes or whatever.
Yeah.
The afterlife. My favorite horror director might actually be, believe it or not, because I referenced this film as being my favorite, spoiler, my favorite horror. I think it was my favorite Italian horror film, Demons. Lamberto Bava. He might be my favorite director, Italian horror director.
Okay.
Argento, maybe Argento. But I think Bava might be the top one. Yeah, based on just my love of Demons 1 and Demons 2.
Yeah, and I love those movies as well, guys and gals. Spoiler alert, we actually have both of them kind of ready. We want to tackle them back to back as sort of like a two-parter, but we also want David Irons to be on those episodes, so we're kind of Zach's got the Blu-rays, I got the Blu-rays. We're kind of just waiting to sort of sync up schedules and everything. But as you all know, David's a very, very busy man. But it will happen. We will tackle Demons on the show, Demons 1 and 2, because I love that as well. Me personally, I always liked Fulci probably the most. But it doesn't take away from the other directors. Like I love the look of this genre. I love the look of this era. I love movies from this era and everything, especially horror movies coming out of Italy. It's just, it's, the blood sometimes looks fake, but I love it. You know what I mean? There's just something about it all that I love. It just feels so gritty and real and almost like guerrilla filmmaking a little bit,
Yeah, I take the flip side in my love of Fulci. I would almost just want to see images with music that he shot, because aesthetically what he does on screen is so striking, and accompanying that with a fantastic score, it really, I could just look at that all day. It's like moving art, the shot in this movie where it's the shot of the village, where it's kind of the wind is blowing the dust around, and you see like whether it wasn't a donkey at this part,
a goat, like goats else walking around. Yeah,
but very desolate and open. And I'm just looking at that, and I almost wanted to freeze frame it because it's so beautiful.
It's beautiful in its disturbingness, and that's kind of like how the end of The Beyond was, when they sort of go off into the beyond, or hell, whatever that is, where all the bodies and the sand dunes and everything, and I think that's what I love about this movie. What really strikes me about this movie is the visuals. Same as you. I love those shots, and like where you just see that one lone zombie off in the distance walking down the street in broad daylight, but the wind is kicking up. I love the use of wind in this movie, and I love the fact that the zombies' eyes are closed. It's almost as if they can just sort of sense you, and it makes them a bit more supernatural than, say, Dawn of the Dead or Night of the Living Dead, which kind of tries to take a virus or a space sort of, thing with it, whereas this is voodoo. They really lay into the voodoo aspect of this, but it's still very different than like White Zombie in those other movies. Those other zombie movies that came out before Night of the Living Dead, the original one.
Yes. Yeah, we're talking 68 prior.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And Night of the Living Dead obviously changed all that. So
changed the entire game, man. It turned it from being like voodoo resurrected things to being like, apocalyptic and everything. And the zombies that we know and love today all come from Night of the Living Dead. Every single one of them.
Yeah, and I feel like this movie can live within the Dawn Day trilogy, because though they do say throughout most of the movie that it's probably voodoo, they also speculate that it may not be.
Right.
The doctor saying, I don't want to, admit that, or I don't want to believe that it's something supernatural. So adds to that possibility of, well, maybe it is some sort of weird virus. We don't know. Mm-hmm. What we do know is pretty much everybody dies.
Yeah, exactly.
And then some people probably should have died that didn't die. They're lucky they didn't die. They owe a lot. To Brian Hull.
I was going to say, to poor Brian.
that poor former hockey player Brett Hull. Sorry, Brian Hull. We'll get to him in a minute.
We will. So
I gave him a shout out in the intro. I was like, oh, I'm going with Al Cliver. I love that dude as Brian Hull.
Yeah, I love him too,
Fucking
man.
awesome.
I thought he was
Best part of the movie.
It's complete. Well, the boobs might be the best part.
Well, yes.
We kind of we talked a lot about Fulci just now. Any other movies offhand that you want to discuss, other than the Gates of Hell, of course the late that famous scene of the lady vomiting up her intestines and whatnot. Are there any standouts that maybe to you that maybe people might not know?
I mean, Gates of Hell, that always gets, people always shout that movie out. I get it. I get it. I have a hard time with it because the coughing up the guts is really hard. That scene in particular is really hard for me to, no pun intended, stomach.
Yeah.
Contraband is a thriller he did. It's really cool. If you've never seen it, Fabio Testi is in it. Just badass crime film. Italians made great crime films. Fulci did do some really good westerns. He did one called Four of the Apocalypse, which stars, again, Fabio Testi and Michael J. Pollard, actually, too. Y'all probably know him from, I think he did Michael J. Pollard was in a movie we talked about on Podcasting After Dark, I believe. But he was in Scrooged and Tango and Cash.
He was in Split Second. We talked about him in Split Second, yeah.
That's right, yeah. For the Apocalypse, if you've never seen that, I have this great, I have a bunch of spaghetti Western box sets. Anchor Bay put out one years ago that was really, really good, and that one is in that box set. I mean, the guy is a tour de force. Maybe he is my favorite director. Maybe I guess. I mean, I do love all his work.
Yeah.
Not all of his work, but I do love a lot of his work, and those are just a couple others that should check out.
And yes, I've seen Gates of Hell, and I kind of felt the same way as you. It was, I mean, I love that it exists, but for me personally, it was a bit too far, with the intestines. Although, again, like I said, I'm happy that it exists. I don't feel the need to really kind of dive into it again,
Well, and I gotta say too, because this piggybacks off of what we talked about. Maybe it was in the last episode. I referenced an Italian horror film that I saw at the Arrow Theater recently, where people were like, "Oh my god, it's gonna be on screen! I've never seen this." And then you see it and you're like, yeah, but it's really rough to watch. Like, it's hard to watch. It's just not for me. Like, I don't look at that and go, oh, yeah, fucking do it. Like, I look at that and go, can we go ahead 10 seconds on this scene? Because it's a little too much. Like, I think that's maybe my minor complaint with Italian horror is the use of the use of maggots and the use of worms. Like, I get it. It's gross. For that shocking effect, it works. It's just not for me. It's not for me.
Now, the one that I haven't seen that I really want to see is House by the Cemetery. Is that a good one?
It's been some time since I've seen that film. I remember it being a shocker way back when. Yeah, I mean, it's worth watching.
Yeah, at least once, right?
I think you should watch some of the westerns.
Oh,
personally,
I think you
should. I think you should start diving into some of the Italian westerns because there's a level of horror in that too. Django is a fucking beast of a western horror film. It's western horror. It's dark and gritty, and balls to the wall greatness, like action. So
nice.
I don't know. I would pitch that to you. I'd be like, watch those.
Okay. I mean, no, I listen to you, buddy. I'll check that out for sure. I'll go check out the Four for the Apocalypse. Is that what it was called?
Yeah. Four of the Apocalypse,
okay.
I believe it's called. And then, we might be covering a Western later this year on Podcasting After Dark, a spaghetti Western.
I am A-okay with that, my friend.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the writers?
Sure. Elisa Briganti and Dardano Sacchetti. If I mispronounce these names, I apologize. But guys,
I'm just glad I didn't have to say it, man.
I go with it. I do my best. Yeah, I mean, Dardano, he directed or wrote 1990, what is it, the 1990, The Bronx Warriors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cheesy sci-fi. I love it. Fred Williamson. It's Vic Morrow. It's balls to the wall craziness. I love it. And then Elisa Briganti. I think, she co-wrote the screenplay for 1990, The Bronx Warriors as well. And Hands of Steel, which is another fun one.
I was going to say, and Hands of Steel. I think our pals over at Action covered that one, I believe. But yeah, old Hands of Steel.
Hands of Steel. We're not talking about Ronnie Garvin, the professional wrestler.
Yeah.
I think he was Hands of Stone. Hands of Stone. Should we talk about the cast, or do you want to talk about more of should we talk about the composer?
Well, I'll let you talk about the composer in a second. I wanted to really quick talk about the excellent makeup effects done by Gianetto De Rossi. I believe, he has a team of people working with him, but I believe he was the sort of the head guy behind all the amazing effects in this movie. He's also worked on The Beyond. He also worked on House by the Cemetery. But he also worked on Conan the Destroyer and some of the creative makeup, and David Lynch's Dune as some of the creative makeup. So this guy is pretty amazing, and the stuff that he's doing here, especially the eyeball thing, especially Susan's throat getting ripped out, there's just some amazing effects going on here.
Yeah, really impressive, and maybe a little groundbreaking for its time too.
Yeah, pretty much. Dude, Fabio Frizzi, man, you gotta talk.
Frizzi.
This score, I love the score for this movie.
Not my favorite score of his. Obviously, I think The Beyond and Contraband has a really good score as well that he did. He works. I mean, it's kind of like, what is it? John Williams with Spielberg.
Yeah,
the two of them did a lot of stuff together. So, City of the Living Dead, like I said, The Beyond, Contraband, to name a few. Yeah, it's legendary. There's a band called Zombie Zombie that did a cool music video with G.I. Joe figures recreating The Thing, stop motion. I don't know if they sampled or they just came up with their own rhythms that sounded just like tracks from this soundtrack. Really cool stuff. They're clearly fans of Fabio Frizzi as well.
I mean, who
and when you say his name, you have to Frizzi. You have to enunciate and kind of thrust yourself in the sky. Should we talk about the cast?
Absolutely. Let's get into it with Mia, starting with Mia Farrow's sister, huh?
Yeah. So Tisa Farrow. Yeah, she didn't have a huge career. God, when she looks at the camera directly, I have a really hard time with people who look directly in the camera. I know it's a choice that directors made. They did it in Silence of the Lambs, and they do it in one of the Trancers movies. It might be like part 3, where they're talking directly into the camera to the character. It's so disarm, like it's so annoying. I don't like it. It's something that I'm not a fan of. So when she looks at the camera, I'm like, I don't really like you that much.
And it's funny that she's top billed because she's my least favorite character in the movie. And I don't necessarily fault the actress for that because I don't think that the script gives her really anything to do other than stare off into the distance. And I note it multiple times in my script breakdown here that she's staring off into the distance. Like, it's her thing. I find the funny thing is I find her to be annoying, but she's the lead. But the thing is, she's in the movie the whole way, but there's moments where I sort of just forget that she exists because she's not doing anything. Like, none of the action kind of revolves around her. Like, someone else is always fighting a zombie. Not always, but for the most part. And then at the same time, she also has like no agency over anything that she's doing whatsoever.
No, I totally agree with you. She doesn't do it for me. I get it. She's the lead. I get that she's supposed to be the main kind of character because it's her father that she's looking for. I find the supporting actors so much more enjoyable, and I want to know their backstory more than I want to know hers. Personally.
Me too, dude. I mean, honestly, anytime I think of this movie, I think of Ian McCulloch as the lead. Peter West, to me, he's the main character.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Ian McCulloch fan. He was in a really cool BBC television show called Survivors, and it's the first thing that comes up when you look his name up on IMDb. If you've never seen Survivors, we may need to bring it to TV Obscura because it's a really cool, like, post-apocalyptic type show. Another show ahead of its time, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. That came up in the documentary because I believe Fulci or the casting director saw him in Survivors, and that's why they brought him into Zombie. I saw him in 1980s Contamination, which I watched I watched during COVID, during quarantine. I was on a kick of watching movies that I hadn't seen like from this time period. And I watched Contamination. It was fine. It was okay. It wasn't the greatest thing I'd ever seen.
I love when people are like, if you liked Alien, you'll love Contamination. And it's more like, sometimes when you sit on the toilet, you go pee and poop. And they both can be equally satisfying. But one is totally different from the other.
Alien is very different than Contamination. Yes.
Just saying. Ian McCulloch's funny. I was feeling bad for him. I'm like,
his hair?
His hair. Yeah. I was feeling bad for him. But I'm like, you should have died. You should have died and someone else should have lived. But we'll get to him in a minute.
Yeah.
I love him so much.
Al Cliver should have fucking lived, for sure.
Al Cliver should have fucking lived. And we'll just talk about him really quickly. Yeah. He plays Brian Hull, not the St. Louis Blues hockey player. He's so good. He's an Egyptian. He was born in Egypt.
Oh, okay.
I think most of his movies were like Italian type films. The guy's good. He's a good, second in command. Reminds me of another kind of character we're going to see in my next pick, believe it or not, for Podcasting After Dark, which you can find out what that pick is ahead of time before anyone else if you sign up for our Patreon exclusive series, Wrap Up After Dark, along with the Carpenter Factor. Go to patreon.com/podcastingafterdark. If you are already a subscriber, like Dylan Laurie just became a subscriber, shout out to Dylan. Thank you. And if you are considering it, pull the trigger like Richard Johnson, a.k.a. Dr. Menard, does on those zombies in the head. I guess Brian Hull does too. Brian Hull shoots a bunch of zombies too, but not in the head necessarily.
No.
Not all of them. Only a couple.
I think Richard Johnson does a better job, but good plug. I was trying to see how you're going to tie it all back together, and you know what?
I tried. It was hard, but I did it.
You brought it back. You brought it back to Richard Johnson. Yeah, I really liked him. I also liked his crazy ear hair. That was very enjoyable. He had like a
HD.
Dude, he had like a 5 o'clock shadow around his fucking ear holes, man. That shit was fucking wild. But I enjoyed the gravitas. You know what? He wasn't that grandiose. Like, I thought he actually played it very sort of grandiose, but still keeping it pretty fucking like leveled. That is what I'm trying to say, like grounded. I felt he was kind of grounded in a sort of Island of Dr. Moreau way. Like, he could have been over the top, but I like the way Richard Johnson played Dr. Menard.
Yeah, I didn't get the sense that he was this psycho. I got the sense that he was just this doctor that fell into these unfortunate circumstances and was trying to make the best of it.
I think the only person in the movie that really hated him was his wife.
Yeah. Understandable.
Yeah, because she's way too hot for him, that's why.
Out of his league.
Dude, like, I mean, he's like an older dude that's like, he's like, I don't know, 7.5. She's like a fucking 20-year-old 9 or a 10. It's like, holy shit. And she's stuck on this fucking island. I am, of course, we're going out of order here, but I'm, of course, talking about Olga Karlatos, who doesn't...
Yes, one of the first to get naked in this film. Not the first, but one of two.
Well, only two, right? Okay, yeah, her and Susan, pretty much. But Olga, she didn't actually have a lot of credits under her belt, except she was in Purple Rain.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
As Mother.
Oh. Oofa. Well, she's great in this for her limited amount of time. When she stares off into the distance, it feels like it means something.
Right?
Versus Tisa.
Yeah, I feel like Olga brought more gravitas to the role than Tisa did.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Aretta Gay, who plays Susan, also brings a level of gravitas. And looks like she needed some sunscreen too, by the way. She was getting sunburnt.
Yeah, dude, she was bronzed.
Apparently the thing is to swim topless when you are in an Italian film.
I mean, I'm not complaining.
I'm not either, but it's I was like, oh, and that's an interesting swimming cap she's wearing on her head. It looks like it could probably clean food off dishes too.
She had more fabric on the top of her head than she had anywhere on her body. Kind of reminded me of the movie The Deep. Who was that? Jacqueline Bisset in that one with the whole famous, see-through top scuba diving scene and everything.
Yes, and I think once again, my follow-up to this film, my next pick on Podcasting After Dark, shares a similarity to this as well in the female lead. Not fully, but like partially.
Yeah. I know what movie it is, and there are going to be some similarities. Do you want to call it Nurse Clara Stefania DeMario?
Sure. I mean, is she notable for anything?
The English Patient. She was worked on the art department for that, so clearly she does not have a lot of credits under her belt.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is one of those movies that does not have a memorable cast outside of a few standouts. That went on to have consistent careers after this. But this feels like it's an independent film, so to speak, with an independent film type cast.
Yeah, and it should be noted that it was filmed in like a month and then came out 3 months later. So they really fast-tracked this movie, but I don't think that shows. You know what I mean? To me it feels like a very competently made feature film.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it's got moments in it that we'll obviously talk about that don't that go a little long, but outside of that, it's a dreamlike film. Fulci was so good at capturing a dreamlike quality with his movies, and so if you are a fan of that, you will love this movie. If you are not a fan of dreamlike films and like things more straightforward, then you may not enjoy this film. To be honest with you, I think you have to embrace the fact that this movie is it's a fever dream. It's not Dawn of the Dead. It's not 28 Days Later. It's not, I'm trying to think of different types of zombie movies in the past decades that we've seen. It has its own vibe to it. And then it was often imitated afterwards. I mean, Zombie 3, Zombie 4.
Yeah.
So many movies that kind of just ripped off the same premise, and they were enjoyable in their own way. But this one sets the bar at its particular style. Yeah.
Like you said, you have to embrace the fever dreamness of it. You have to embrace the absurdity of it. I think you're correct in that aspect, and maybe that is one of the things that I always liked about Fulci and didn't really put my finger on it. I think The Beyond is kind of his culmination of that dreamlike horror and everything.
Totally.
But it's nice that he was able to insert some of that dreamlike horror into what could just have been a standard run-of-the-mill zombie movie that just faded off into obscurity.
Yeah, and I love island zombie movies. I think I've yet to see one that's been made by Americans outside of the last 5 minutes of Dawn of the Dead.
Right.
That was any good. Because they haven't done a good one yet that's taken place on an island in the past 20 years.
No, you're right.
Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things is the only American island zombie movie that, in my opinion, is good.
Yeah, because House of the Dead fucking sucked ass. So agreed.
It sure did. Yui Ball. That's amazing how certain people can get movies made and get their name on it. And oofa doofa.
Fail upward, you know.
Yeah, God bless him. God bless him, as Jack Burton would say. Yeah, I let's. Should we pull the trigger on this?
Ahoy there! This is the Harbor Patrol. Anyone on board?
Yes, she looks abandoned.
Is it something big? That's just what we'd like to know.
One more step and I'm gonna blast you. Now freeze where you are!
Yes, it's my father's boat.
And how long since you last spoke to him?
Well, we have to go to Matul. We're trying to locate Anne's father. She hasn't heard from him for some time.
That's not a cool place to hit. Natives claim it's cursed. They avoid it like the plague.
I'm going to tell everyone that you're the one who's crazy. Demented, cruel, evil son.
What exactly did my father die of, Dr. Minor? And the boat's crew, what happened to them?
What's about the dead coming back to life again and having to be killed a second time?
These islands, fantastic legends, voodooism, zombies, been rife for centuries.
Voodoo's just superstitious horseshit.
Now, whatever it is, it makes the dead stand up and walk. I've seen it with my own eyes.
Father of my father always said, when the earth spit out the dead, they will come back to suck the blood from the living.
I'm so scared we're not going to make it off this island.
They're coming back to life. They're everywhere.
So whatever it is, it makes the dead stand up and walk.
The movie opens with a shot of a man pointing a pistol at the camera. The man is fully in shadow. We see a person completely wrapped in a white sheet from head to toe and tied up with a rope, slowly sit up from the bed they were laying on. The man fires his gun and blows a hole through the sheet where the person's head is. Blood splatters everywhere. The man says, "The boat can leave now. Tell the crew." And then boom, zombie comes up on the screen. Dude, love a cold open like this, man.
Yeah, awesome. So awesome. So awesome. By the way, I think to piggyback on what you said about zombies that freak you out, the ones where their eyes are closed, I equally say zombies that are unidentifiable to me are more terrifying. So people like that are of a different region in the world outside of the US are more terrifying to me, because I'm just like, I just can imagine the horrors that they went through up until this point.
Yeah.
Versus American zombies who are like, you know, looking like people. I'm not a huge fan of that.
Right.
With
like
their eyes, pupils, and all that stuff.
Right. Like the George Romero style zombie, which, you know, obviously that kind of coincides with the point George Romero is trying to make with, you know, his movies, is that these zombies are us. So I think he wanted them to look like us, just with like, you know, pale blue skin and stuff like that. Whereas here, these zombies are like, it's just mud is caked on them. They have all kinds of just wounds and deformities because like some of them are like years old and everything. And I'm with you. I like the zombies that are just horrific, and you're just like, what damage happened to you to look like this, you know, and stuff like that.
What happened to you, man?
Like some of the zombies in Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, I think fit more with this than the Romero ones.
Yeah, and I think the Living Dead at Manchester Morgue also too. Let Sleeping Corpses Lie.
Yeah, that's it's another one I love, and that's another one that we will get to. You know, might be like season 6 or something like that, but we'll get there for sure, because I fucking love that movie, and I know Zach does as well.
Yeah, we'll get there.
An awesome score by Fabio Frizzi and Giorgio Tucci kicks in while the credits play over a black background. Interestingly enough, Richard Johnson is the only person to have a border, like a white border around his name.
Yeah, what do you get from that?
I think that's kind of like, you know how like some actors will request, you know, their name to be at the end of the credits and be like, you know, and Drew Barrymore, you know, like, or featuring some, you know what I mean? And I think that was just a way of bumping his credit up a little bit, because I think he is probably the most seasoned actor in the movie.
Can you put a white box around my name? Do you want starring? No, I would like a white box.
It makes it stand out.
That's what I was thinking. It makes me stand out.
Your ear hair also makes you stand out too.
Yes, it does. But people will pay for my ear hair.
Dude, this reminds me, man, back in the day, we've talked about it so many times before, but like how guys didn't groom anything that wasn't like their beard, so they had like unibrows and, you know what I mean, and ear hair sticking out.
My God, I have one little hair, and I'm like, oh, I gotta pull it out.
I do get one really long one, like on my earlobe, and I just like, I pluck it, but sometimes it'll grow like overnight. Guys and gals, welcome to the old man uncle corner of Podcast After Dark.
Gray hair down below.
Cut to an abandoned sailing yacht floating through the New York harbor. It almost gets hit by the Staten Island ferry. The harbor patrol is called out to investigate. As they pull up next to the yacht, the police officer uses the bullhorn to hail the vessel. When they get no reply, they determine the sailboat is abandoned. The helicopter circling the sailboat radios back to headquarters. The harbor patrol is about to board now. Still no signs of life. Skipper of that craft must be a real turkey. First off, I just love, you must be a real turkey. But also, I gotta admit, Fulci, man, he knows how to use his budget, because he never films the helicopter. He just uses the helicopter that they rented to get the aerial shots, but then sometimes he'll add a propeller noise to it to the camera work, and then you're like, oh, now we're looking at the view from the helicopter. But we never actually see like the police helicopter fly over. I was like, this is just a genius use of your budget, and I think proof that Fulci knows where to put his money and where he realizes, like, no one needs to see the police helicopter. You can just use the same helicopter that we're filming with, essentially.
Suspension of disbelief in Hollywood? Wow.
Expertly crafted.
Yes. Could you CGI some hair upon my head? No, Ian. Please.
Oh God, his poor hair. When I grew my hair out long, it looked like that. It just like flopped over, and I was like, oh, I'm glad I shaved it.
You got a good head.
I do. The two police officers walk onto the abandoned sailing yacht. One of them is almost hit by this falling sail due to a broken winch. The officer that almost got hit says he'll fix it and orders the other officer below deck.
Hey, go check it out, eh? I love the bad dubbing in this. Well, it's not bad. It's comical. You know, you get used to it as the movie progresses, but it is pretty silly. Because this is the two Italian guys, you know, but they got these really thick, like, New York accents.
And if this is your first experience with Italian horror, you have to sort of understand that everything is going to be dubbed, because over there when they film, they don't roll sound, because some actors are speaking English, some actors are speaking Italian. Like, for example, the news chief in this will be speaking Italian, and that's also played by Lucio Fulci.
Sure is.
But that's the norm over there. And you and I have both heard horror stories of American film crews trying to like film in Italy, and they're rolling sound, and you know, crew members are talking and banging on things, and they're like, what the fuck is going on? But over there, sort of the industry standard, because they have such an eclectic mix of international actors speaking different languages, they just dub everything in post-production, and they don't roll any sound on set. So like, you can literally having gaffers be hanging shit while like hammering shit while you're doing a scene, you know?
Right. Yeah. And you'll like, oftentimes you're like, well, what's the original, you know, in Jackie Chan movies, for example, you want to hear the original dialect in the film. They don't have that for Italian Westerns, horror, stuff like that. It's just, well, no, it's the dub version.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that has its pluses and minuses. It makes it easier, I think, to send them out internationally, because you can just dub any language you want. But the minuses is, you know, it's all Foleyed. Like, all the sound is Foleyed, so there's like not a lot of natural sound and stuff, and it can be jarring if you're not used to it. I think that's what we're saying, basically.
Yes, absolutely.
But you get used to it after a while. As the officer descends the stairs, he's met by a foul odor. He looks around in disgust and sees trash and half-eaten food scattered all around the cabin. Flies fill the air around him. He investigates further and finds a severed hand on the small couch. As he's looking down in horror, a large zombie busts through the cabin door and tackles the police officer. As he's fighting the creature, he tears off a rotten piece of flesh from the creature's arm. The zombie then bites the officer's throat and tears away a huge chunk of flesh. Blood sprays everywhere as he screams. Dude, him ripping off like the piece of chunk from the zombie's arm was awesome, and then just a lot of throat ripping in this movie.
A lot of throat ripping, courtesy of a big bulbous George the Animal Steel.
He always looked like George the Animal Steel to me, or he kind of looked like Tor, you know, from Plan 9 from Outer Space. But then again, George the Animal Steel also kind of looked like Tor as well.
I think he played him in the Ed Wood remake.
I think you're right. By the way, Ed Wood, great movie. I love that movie.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
Up on the deck, the other officer hears the commotion and drops what he's doing. He looks over to see the large, blood-covered zombie slowly climb the ladder and walk towards him. The officer draws his gun and tells the ghoul to stop moving. The zombie keeps coming, and the cop unloads all 6 shots into his body. The creature falls off the boat and into the harbor as the camera pans up to see the New York skyline. And again, this is how you first see these zombies, and I think it's an accurate representation of what we're going to see, because it's just his eyes are closed, slowly lumbering forward, and just also like caked in mud and gore and just viscera, and he just looks fucked up, you know?
Yeah, this looks disgusting.
Cut to a busy newspaper office. The news editor, played by Lucio Fulci, is on the phone talking about the abandoned boat. He jots down some info and says he'll put someone on it. The chief calls Peter West, played by Ian McCulloch, into his office. Are you busy now, Limey? Peter says that depends. I'm going to give you an assignment. Get over to Pier 15. There's a story there. Again, he's speaking in Italian, but he's dubbed in English, so it's not matching up, you know? Peter asks if it's something big. Boat without anyone on it. Cop killed. Poke around a bit. See what you can find. Peter says you'll let him know what he finds. The chief adds, West, keep the British out of your prose, huh? Don't take advantage of the fact that your uncle bought the paper. Peter smiles and says, "As if I would."
Right off the bat, I'm a little like, I'm not sure if I'm really digging Peter all that much. He's kind of a silver spoon guy.
Little douchey, maybe?
Yeah, a little douchey. And then does he whine later when he injures himself. I can't walk. Wee.
With a giant fucking hole in your leg, too.
Yeah, come on. Man up. Man up.
Come on, man. Cut to Pier 15, and the abandoned boat is crawling with cops and forensics people.
Crawling with cops.
We see a crowd of onlookers being held back by an officer and his cruiser. Of course, one of my favorite things is just seeing the fashion from like 1978 and everything.
Oh, it's great.
And the cars and everything too, you know. On the boat, below deck, we see Anne Bowles, played by Tisa Farrow, talking to detectives. She looks in shock. Her natural state the entire fucking movie, and I'll keep calling it out.
Huh? That's what I feel like she's always doing. Huh?
I mean, you guys have to see the video that I'm looking at. Zach. He's so right. Like, her eyes are like halfway open. What?
Huh?
And yes, like this is also directing. This is also Fulci's directing.
Yeah.
This is also the writing doesn't really give her much to do. But at the same time, I can kind of see why she didn't pop like her sister did, you know?
Yeah.
Although I do kind of find her a bit more attractive than Mia Farrow. I was never a big Mia Farrow fan, but I do like Rosemary's Baby. I think that's a
I don't know.
cool movie.
This Tisa has like bags under her eyes throughout this thing where I'm just like, my God, did she get any sleep?
I don't think she did.
No.
She said,
I got paid $20 an hour.
And I didn't sleep at all.
No.
She says, yes, it's my father's boat. One of the detectives asks, where's your father now? Anne says she doesn't know and was hoping they could tell her. She hasn't heard from him in over a month. Another detective asks how long it's been since she spoke to him. Even though she just said that. Anne says 3 months.
I caught that too.
Anne says 3. Not the tightest script in the world, guys. It's okay. This is this is still kind of a B movie. I mean, essentially, you know.
Well, you're gonna have another moment with Peter later. He's like, I just told you what I just.
I just told you my name. 3 months. When he set sail for the Antilles to join some friends. Wedge Antilles from Star Wars. Will someone please tell me what the hell is going on? The first detective says, we already have. Man hiding on the boat, which was adrift, killed a member of the Coast Guard. Not the Coast Guard, Harbor Patrol, but okay.
Sure.
This script is wild, guys. Anne asks what happened to her father, and the second detective says, menacingly, that's just what we'd like to know, Miss Bowles. Anne stares at the camera in shock. So, again, her natural state. So I watched
She stares directly at the camera, which is really disarming. It's really disturbing for me. I'm like, don't look at me. Don't look at me.
And it's a weird cut too, because the music kind of swells and then it cuts immediately when we cut to the next scene. But I do want to add that I watched this with my wife, Myra. Wasn't sure how she was going to take it because I know that the women in this movie aren't going to be the strongest. She quite enjoyed it, but she did remark that, Anne was not like one of her favorite characters, and the women weren't the strongest for him. But one thing I love to death about my wife is she's like, it's of the time. She understands that it's of the time and, kind of doesn't ding it for it. But overall, she very much enjoyed the movie. But here, this exact scene, this exact moment, this weird cut, she called this out. She was like, why is she just staring at the camera? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know.
Again, I'm not a fan of that style of directing. I've seen it done by Jonathan Demme with Silence of the Lambs. When Starling is talking to Agent, her boss, Scott Glenn's character, they're like looking directly into the camera. It's so weird. I'm like, wait, we are not the protagonist. We are not. Why are you doing that all of a sudden? It doesn't make any sense at all. It's a choice. I'm not a fan of it.
And of course, we're going to call out all the silliness of this movie because it has a lot of it, and we're breaking down the entire film, so we will.
So fuck you and thank you.
But that does not take away from the love that I have for this movie.
No.
It's just you sort of take it with it's all the Mystery Science Theater shit back in the day. It's like these are the kind of movies, you sort of would make fun of, but this one's different. This one would still leave you, scared at the end of it.
Yes.
Cut to the New York Medical Examiner's office. An autopsy is being performed on the police officer that had his throat ripped out by the fat zombie on the boat. The two doctors can't understand why a rush was placed on the autopsy, though. One doctor asks the other if he's examined the body yet. I made 1 or 2 notes. In my opinion, the death of the poor bastard was caused by a massive hemorrhage due to a huge laceration of the jugular. The other doctor asks if he has a hypothesis for the cause of the injury. The first examiner shakes his head no. The other one very condescendingly, makes his finger, come over here.
It's really funny. Yeah.
Take a look at these edges. To me, it's quite obvious what caused it. There appear to be clear indications of 1 or more bites. The first doctor looks closely at the wound but shakes his head again. The other doctor asks for a scalpel, but then chastises him for how poorly he kept his instruments. It's like a silly little scene. But really, the takeaway of it is, as the doctors argue about the scalpel, the camera pans down to the body, and we see it start to move under the white medical sheet.
I love that.
Yeah, this is one of those movies that is very small, in its sort of cast and what we see, but it's in sort of maybe the scope, but big things are happening around it.
Yeah. It's subtle things that you pick up on. You're like, well, not subtle because the camera pans over to it, but precursors to big things on the horizon.
Correct. Yep. And if, you're a fan of zombie movies, you can probably see where this is going to go.
Yes.
Later that night at Pier 15, a lone police officer is guarding the boat/crime scene. Now, this was hilarious. We see Anne comically sneak past him by ducking behind a trash can and then board the ship. Myra thought this was the most ridiculous part.
Oh, not the disco music that's about to follow?
I don't even know what that music was. I don't even have it in the notes because I was like, I almost put it out of my mind because I don't understand the music that's happening in the scene. Is it diegetic music? Is it coming from that police officer's radio? Or
I thought it was from his car.
Okay,
yeah.
So it's not music that's supposed to just be accompanying the scene. It's music that's actually in the world itself.
I think so, yeah.
Oofa loofah. Because and the reason I sort of was questioning that because later the chants and the drumming, it's hard to tell when it's a part of the score and when it's actually the characters can hear it as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because don't they say, "Do you hear that?"
Right,
it's voodoo music.
Yeah, and
wait,
at some
what?
point, they do. At some point they do, but there's also some times where I think it's just a part of the score, and they don't actually hear it.
No.
Weird.
1 month.
Again, yeah, guys and gals, made in 1 month.
Again, fever dream. Not everything has to match up.
Exactly, and again, does not take away from an iota of the love that I have for this movie. Anne is searching for clues below deck when a hand shoots out of the shadows and grabs her. The hand covers her mouth so she doesn't scream. It's Peter West. Don't scream. There's nothing to be afraid of. Well, I don't know yet. My name is Peter West, and I'm a reporter. I'm going to take my hand away, and you're not going to scream, okay? Anne nods and lets her go. Anne nods and he lets her go. I'm sorry if I frightened you, but if I hadn't done that, you'd have screamed for sure, and our friend up there would have been on to both of us. Anne asks what he's doing on her father's boat. Peter says he's been following her all afternoon. He's not buying the official police report that he doesn't think Anne... He's not buying the police report, and he doesn't think Anne is either, since she's sneaking onto the boat as well. And this was the scene where she was like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "I just told you, I'm Peter West."
I'm Peter West. Look, I've got a great idea. I want to lay down with you. This is gonna fool everyone. We're gonna lay down on this bed here, you see? And then next thing you know, we're gonna be making out like we're having the most passionate love-making session in the world.
My pants are gonna come off.
my pants will come off, and my genitalia will probably fall into the nether region. But I must assure you, this is for the greater good. This is to keep us away from the police officers, or as I like to call, the cockblockers. The new book, Cockblockers by David Irons, coming soon.
This is true. Peter asks Anne what she was looking for. She gets pissed and says he has a lot of nerve. Peter chuckles and replies, "You're not so bad yourself. Let me put it this way. I've got some information. You've got some information. Why don't we just throw it together and see what we can come up with? Because I think I've already found what you're looking for." He takes a letter out of his jacket pocket and shows it to her. Anne reaches for the letter, but knocks over a lamp, causing the cop on duty to come down and investigate. When she asks what they're going to do, Peter says he has an idea, but he'll need her help. Unless, of course, you want to be explaining to some judge what you were doing on your father's boat in the middle of the night. Just do what I tell you, okay? See Zach's entire comment that he just made 2 seconds ago.
Look, it's a great idea.
It's a great idea.
It keep you out of jail. Would you rather be in the pokey, getting poked, or would you rather be with me, with a different kind of pokey?
It's a great idea that involves me taking off my pants, but you're not. You're not going to have to, so don't worry about it.
No, you don't have to. It's okay. I can get you pregnant through your clothes. What?
I can get you pregnant with my voice. The police, so she agrees, of course. The police officer does, because she's a woman in an Italian horror film in the 1970s, she agrees to whatever plan Peter West has because she has no agency over herself.
Look, I'll do everything you tell me to do, except I won't get naked, but I'll do everything else. That's okay. It's okay. We'll make it work, yeah.
She gets close. I kind of was trying to look down her top a couple times. I was like, no, there's nothing there. Sleazy strikes again.
Oh, little Corey Gory.
The police officer descends the stairs to the lower deck with his flashlight on. He slowly makes his way through the darkness until he hears moaning. He shines his flashlight to the bed and sees Peter and Anne making out, or pretending to at least. The officer says, "Don't give me the same old story." Anne says, "It was his idea, not mine." Peter says, "Listen to her, Mrs. Goody Two-Shoes." "Well, whose idea was it to have a romantic setting down by the water? I'd have settled for an empty boxcar." Anne says, "Oh no, never again, not another boxcar." She takes after her mother. They're both bananas. The cop watches the pretend couple fight, then tells them to get lost. As they leave, Anne says goodnight to the officer twice.
Yeah, it's really weird.
She's like, "Good night, officer." And he's like, "Get out of here." And then she looks back. She's like, "Good night." And then it's like it cuts. And I'm like, why? You didn't need that second. Why?
Why? And get some sleep.
Seriously. And also a boxcar, like, was his idea for them to be like a married couple? Like, whoa, you know what I mean?
Last time we were at a food bank in a cardboard box. It was amazing. You remember how great that was, darling? Yeah. And the hypodermic needles were next to us. Oh, it was fantastic.
Oh, you take after your mother, you bananas, both of you.
Oh, your mother was my first. You're my second. I always say the seconds are better than the firsts.
It almost sounded like that. It almost sounded when he's like, she takes after her mother, that he had been with her as well. I mean, this was all a fantasy that he made up, but there's so many like layers to it, you know?
It's so gross. It's so gross. It's just like, it's so gross. Like, there's a honey bucket down the street. Why don't we make use of that? Like, honey bucket? You know, chili pumper.
Like, if this is your plan, it's like it's insight into his brain, basically. You know, he's a perv.
Look, he's gonna come down here. We're gonna be having sex, and it's gonna work. Okay, because I'm in an Italian horror film.
Okay, I have no agency. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Cut to Peter talking to his editor on the payphone. It's dawn, and he's reading the letter while Anne listens and looks forward in shock. Again, her natural state.
Ah.
To my daughter Anne, in case anything should happen to me. Due to my morbid curiosity, I have managed to contract a strange disease, and they are taking care of me as if I were some sort of guinea pig. But I know I'll never leave this island again, at least not alive. I haven't been a good father, but I have always loved you. One last kiss from Dad. Gross. And then, so he's reading it, then he says, Peter says, Matul, and it's dated 15th September. Peter says he knows there's some connection that ties it all together. His father, her father, the disease, the boat, and the guy that got killed. The newspaper chief agrees to send them on the investigation, and Peter reminds him to take care of the tickets.
Make sure we make it back okay. Take care of the tickets. Do.
You're beautiful, man.
What are you, fucking Cary Grant? Of course I'm Cary Grant. Do.
Not with
you
that
don't look
hairline.
like Cary Grant. Not with that, yeah. More like Ted Danson.
Yes. Cut to Anne and Peter at the airport getting ready to depart for the Dominican Republic. The airport lounge is 70s-tastic.
Oh, it is amazing. Amazing. The lounge seats are not, the seats now all look the same. These are like Art Deco style. It's beautiful.
Dude, this scene is literally maybe a minute and a half long, but pound for pound, I didn't blink. Like, I was just like looking everywhere. I was like, look at that guy's hair. Look at that guy's outfit. Look at those chairs. Look at that. It is amazing.
Well, it's interesting you say it's a minute and a half long because everything that needs to happen in this scene is probably 10 seconds long.
Yep.
And then the camera just holds on this because the director, Fulci, was probably like, look at how awesome this airport is. It's great. Yeah, it's fucking great. Let's do it. Let's just keep the camera there. It's great.
And you're not wrong, man. Like, it's actually a really cool fucking shot and a beautiful location. So I can see him be like, well, we got everything we needed, but keep the shot going. Just keep following them till they walk out. And it might be padding for the movie, but I think it's awesome padding.
At least the padding's beautiful.
Right. Hey everybody, Corey here. I just wanted to let you know that we'll be right back after these short messages.
Hey everybody, I'm Tim.
And I'm Dean.
And we're the hosts of Talking Back. We're a retro-based podcast covering movies, comics, video games, and more.
Check us out every Monday where we hit the rewind button and dig into some of our favorite content from the past. We like to keep things fun, lighthearted, and informative.
Do you feel like you need more nostalgia in your life? Then check out Talking Back. We're available everywhere podcasts are found.
Have you been wondering where's the beef? Well, on our podcast, Throwback Trivia Takedown, you might just find that out, as well as some other things about the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
We're a nostalgic-based trivia show that pits two challengers head-to-head in a duel of the decades, with categories ranging from movies, TV, and music, to slang, food, and fashion. You're sure to get the best in retro-themed trivia.
So strap on your jelly shoes, grab a Surge, and walk like an Egyptian to your favorite podcast app and check out Throwback Trivia Takedown.
I heard even Mikey likes it.
And now, back to the show. Cut to, we know we're in the Dominican Republic because island music is playing as the cab picks up Peter and Anne from the airport. Because of course, right? Of course they're playing the island music. We know where we are now,
Yeah, this is the only time when, well, not the only time, but this is the only time when, one of the main times when, like, the music's a little, like, too generic for me. Like, it's so commercialized, generic stuff.
This music doesn't feel like it was by the Fabio Frizzi doing the score. It feels like they just pulled it from, like free to use, copyright free, sort of Caribbean music, essentially.
I get that. Well, in my opinion, if a film like this, which has such a dark tone, the music should continue the dark tone throughout.
Yeah.
It shouldn't break and suddenly have like happy celebration, Caribbean music.
Especially since it's going to kick back into like having an ominous tone when they depart, as well. So I'm with you. They should have kept the, we should never Yeah, that if I could change one thing or have one critique of this amazing movie, is that the upbeat stuff, I would have just kept the intensity and the terror the entire time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I would have had the music be more ominous here still and everything.
Yeah. Instead, this makes me, it's not a bad thing. It makes me want to go to the Caribbean now.
Yeah, it's exactly. It makes me want to go back and watch High Tide and One West Waikiki and fucking Key West. Go listen to our TV Obscure episode from last week.
Yeah, do it. And then hard ticket to Hawaii. It's not paradise all the time.
Thank you, Aaron, for that gift.
Yes.
Peter asks the driver if he knows anyone they can rent a boat from. The driver says it's not easy to find a boat here. Peter says they need to get to Matul. It's very important. He's willing to pay whatever it costs.
I can take you to Matul right now.
Matul's
Put your
in my
hand
pants.
out. I will give you Matul right now. What? I don't know what you're talking about. I'll show you. Oh, that's not what I expected. But I'll take it.
I'm surprised I didn't go there with that.
We want to go to Matul.
Peter hands the driver a few large bills, and he smiles and says, "Just now I remember something. This morning, a friend of mine says, 2 Americans, they cruise the islands." A short time later, the cab pulls up on a beautiful tropical beach and drops off Peter and Anne. The driver points out the boat the 2 Americans are using. He suggests that Peter asks the owner to take them to Matul, or in the Matul in his pants. As Peter and Anne walk towards the dock, the driver asks, "Pedro not help you good, senor?" and holds out his hand. Peter gives him more money and says thanks.
Money goes a long way.
Sure does. Now the movie's about to get good. Peter and Anne walk up to Brian and Susan, our 2 favorite characters, who are loading supplies onto the boat. Susan is wearing a see-through top the entire scene, and it kind of weirdly happens to be wet at some point as well.
Yeah, and is it this scene or is it later on when Peter he just can't take his eyes off her?
Oh, that'll be when she's getting ready to go scuba diving. Yeah,
that's right.
I noted that, but yeah, we will discuss that in length in a second.
My name is Peter. Pervert Peter. That was my name in high school. It still rings true today.
It's still applicable today.
Just because I have a British accent doesn't mean I'm a
pervert
clean.
Peter. I love it. It's so true. It's about to be so fucking true. Yep. Pervert Peter introduces he and Anne to the 2 Americans. I mean, I'm going to have to call him that from now on. And they return the gesture. Peter says, we hear you're going on a tour of the islands. Brian says, yeah, a little cruise. 2 months.
Yeah, a little cruise.
2 months of fishing, bathing in sunshine. Now, Zach, I know it's all dubbed.
Bright Hall, yeah.
I swear to God, I recognize the guy doing Brian's VO. And I don't. Is it the actor? Is he doing his own?
I don't think it is.
Okay,
I think it's
so. No. I swear to fucking God, I recognize the guy who's doing Brian's voice specifically. I don't know from where. To me, it sounds like something from like maybe Robotech or some cartoon or something. But
I think it's also a voice that's probably been used many times in Italian horror films. So.
That's probably the easy answer. Yeah, I mean,
because I think Ian McCulloch does his own, and so does Tisa. They do their own dubbing.
Okay.
Their own ADR. But I don't know about Brett Hull.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely not his voice.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it, you know. But
no, but it's a recognizable voice.
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, who knows? I mean, it could also be from like Hong Kong cinema or something, you know, as well. All that dub stuff back in the day.
You recognize this voice before? Like it seemed like kind of smarmy bad guy.
Right.
He's always in every single Bruce Lee movie back in the day. It was like the same voice.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Peter says they have to go to Matul. Brian and Susan look at each other.
Oh, Matul.
Well, need to go to Matul. Peter goes on. We're trying to locate Anne's father. She hasn't heard from him in some time. Brian says, Matul, that's not a cool place to head. The natives claim it's cursed. They avoid it like the plague. Peter admits that they have to go there all the same. Brian says, and you want to ride from us? If that's possible, Peter replies. Brian asks if they have any experience with boats. Peter says yes, and Anne says she was born on a boat. So, so that means
she wasn't.
She's going to do some awesome stuff on the boat, right? Like, she's actually, like, this is going to be her thing, right? She's actually going to do something, right? Right?
Wrong.
Wrong.
She's born on a boat. I was born on a boat. Yeah, clearly. You look like you're seasick all the time.
She probably was. Brian looks at Susan.
Meanwhile, I would be seasick all the time.
Oh, I know. I know you would.
I'm a little biatch.
Brian looks at Susan and she nods. He says, "Okay, Peter, we'll have to load more supplies. You pay your share. Deal?" They shake hands and Brian welcomes him on board. He goes on, "I'll warn you right now, don't expect us to come sightseeing once we get there. I found it never pays to ignore native superstitions."
And yet they get off the boat with them and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Where I come from, we give each other a lovely handshake. What's a lovely handshake? It's where you put your hands down my pants.
on my matul.
On my matul. They don't call me Pervert Peter for nothing.
Pervert Peter.
I was born on this boat.
No, you weren't. No, you fucking weren't.
My sister was too.
Seriously, if her character was jettisoned from this entire movie, nothing would change. Not a single thing would change.
No, because all Peter's got to do is find the note, want to investigate where it came from in Matul, and you write her whole character off.
Yep, pretty much.
She serves, that's it.
We cut to Dr. Menard, played by Richard Johnson, on the island of Matul, using the radio to contact someone. "This is Matul calling Guadalupe 1. He gets nothing but static on the other end. And by the way, clearly in that scene at the very beginning, that was not Richard Johnson playing that shot. You could tell it wasn't him.
No.
His wife, Olga Carlatos, comes out of the room and she says, "Still no luck?" Dr. Menard says it's useless to go on trying. She says, "Then we're cut off from the rest of the world." The doctor scoffs and says, "Not hardly. I wouldn't say that." He walks over to her. It's interesting. The longest scenes are the ones with Olga. Like, the longest singular scenes are the ones with her.
Because she's fun to look at.
She's striking. She is. Those eyes are amazing.
Those eyes.
Mrs. Maynard tells him that she wants to leave this damn island right now. Of course she does. She's fucking young and hot and wants
This
to
isn't what
fucking
you
rock and
promised
roll.
me. You said this is going to be fun. You said we're going to Matul. It's not what you think. I'm a doctor, damn it.
Need to use a tool on my ear hair.
Yes.
He's like, she wants to leave the island right now. He's like, "Well, you can't right now. The radio isn't working." He brushes her hair, but she knocks his hand away. "How convenient for you. I wouldn't be surprised if you broke it on purpose." No, I mean, it's still working. He's just not getting anyone.
Yeah.
Dr. Menard smiles and says, "You're tired," and tries to caress her face again. But she shoves his hand away and says, "Go to hell." Mrs. Maynard pours herself a tall glass of whiskey, takes a swig. The doctor's about to leave the house when she asks him, "David, are you going out?" "I have to go to the hospital." She asks if they found another one. He doesn't reply, but she panics and says, "They have, haven't they? Tell the truth." Dr. Menard tells his wife to calm down. She asks, "Where did they find it this time?" He says that they're on the other side of the island. She grabs him by the shirt and dramatically asks, "When will they reach this side? Tell me!" She got a big old vein popping on her forehead, too. But
Yeah,
right now.
she does. Yep. She's letting it all hang out.
She sure is. Dr. Maynard says they'll talk after she's rested a bit. "There's really no need to agitate yourself so much." "Well," she says, "I hate you." He replies, "No, you don't know what you're saying."
You just take another pill. You'll be fine.
Mrs. Maynard looks her husband in the eyes and says, "Oh, you'd like to be able to pass me off as crazy. Apart from a handful of superstitious natives, I'm the only one who knows what you're doing. And don't think I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I'm going to tell everyone that you are the one who's crazy, demented, and cruel, and evil." And he smacks her across the face. Dr. Maynard walks to the door and says, "I'll be at the hospital." She laughs and says, "You still see yourself as the scientist you once were, don't you? Well, you're not. You're no better than one of their witch doctors." He yells back that his research, but he's cut off. "You call fooling around with superstitions and voodoo rites research?" He replies, "You know perfectly well that the work I'm doing here is very important, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't." She screams, "I don't give a damn. I don't want to stay on this island for one more hour. You won't be happy until I meet one of your zombies." Foreshadowing.
Yep.
Dr. Maynard tries to comfort her and says, "Now look, as soon as I've understood the phenomenon, we'll leave." She sobs and says, "I don't believe you," and sits on her bed. The good doctor just looks at her and walks out of the house. The camera slowly zooms in on her eyes while drums start pounding in the distance. So this is an example of, first off, staring forward. Like you said, she's better at it than Tisa is. But here, I believe that the drums are a part of the score and she doesn't actually hear them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. I don't think she hears them.
So that's what kind of makes it weird then when later the score and the people in hear the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It'd be funny if he's like, "Do you hear those symphonic notes right now?"
He's like, he looks around, he starts humming. Brr, brr, brr.
Do you hear that?
Is that just in my head? Outside the house, Dr. Maynard asks his gardener to guard the house and to not let anyone near it. Then gets in his Land Rover and leaves.
Manservant?
Yes. See, I called him gardener right here, but later he's going to refer to him as his manservant.
Yes.
And he's Spanish, too, which was like, Myra couldn't figure out where this was supposed to be, because some people are speaking Spanish, but yeah, I guess that's how it is in the Dominican Republic. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And I don't want to get myself in trouble.
Exactly. Cut to Brian, Susan, and Peter and Anne embarking on their journey. We see a young, Dominican man on the deck, watch them leave and make the sign of the cross. And this is when the music becomes ominous again.
Yep. I like that.
I do too. Kind of wish it would have stayed that way but the scenes when they're on the Dominican, it's only a total of 4 or 5 minutes. And
yeah, it goes by really fast.
Back at the Matul Hospital, Dr. Maynard is looking at the blood sample through a microscope. He uses a needle and draws his own blood, then mixes his with the contaminated sample and looks back through the microscope. That's all we get there, guys.
That's all we got. I was looking up locations as well. It takes place in the Dominican Republic and in Mexico as well.
Oh, that's where they filmed it?
Yeah, and then in Rome. The studio stuff is in Rome.
Yeah.
And New York.
Yeah, in New York, yeah. And later when they kind of you see the outside of Dr. Maynard's house, it doesn't feel like the same island as the rest of it. And then inside feels like a set, which it probably was. But to me, I thought that was maybe Hawaii or something where they filmed those, because that's what it looked like to me.
It made me want to go there, that's for sure.
I mean, it is a beautiful location regardless.
Yep.
Back on the boat, here we go. Anne and Pervert Peter are next to Brian at the captain's seat. Anne says they sure were lucky to find them. Brian says, "We're sure not having the same kind of luck trying to find this island for you." Peter points at a map and asks, "We should be somewhere around here, right? But according to the map, there are no islands for the next 60 miles. Brian says, "Not necessarily true. There are so many islands around here that a lot have never even been charted. Like the last couple we saw. They're not on any chart. It's all hit and miss. We could spend a month out here." Peter says it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. Anne asks, "You don't want to go back, do you?" Peter says, "No, they'll find Matul. That's a promise." Brian says, "Hey, now look, don't go counting on us forever. Don't forget, we're on vacation." Susan calls to Brian from the deck of the ship, down below basically. She asks them to stop for a while. She wants to do some scuba diving. Brian agrees and shuts off the boat's engine. Peter and Anne watch. They both watch, but Peter much more intently as Susan takes off her see-through top to reveal only a fucking tiny G-string underneath. She puts on her scuba gear and dives in. And just like I was saying, her cap has more fabric than that fucking G-string.
Yeah, her cap is like a scrub brush for cups.
Yeah, it is.
Yep. And Pervert Peter, I'm doing a documentary right now, and well, where's your camera? It's in my eyes. What? It's my eyes or the cameras to your soul. What are you talking about? Trying to pick you up, can't you tell? Yeah, it's not working. Damn it.
Because my boyfriend is much hotter than you are.
And he's right there. He plays hockey for the St. Louis Blues. His name's Brett Hall. Sorry.
I love your Brett Hall reference because I have no idea who this person is. But
I don't know who Brett Hall is. He's a Hall of Famer.
I'm not a hockey guy. Who did he play for?
Come on. The St. Louis Blues.
Is that what you just said?
Yes.
Right, yes. When you said Brett Hall hockey, my brain just faded.
Who are you?
I just said it. What is this, a Lucio Fulci movie? I just said it. But yeah, Peter does look on. He kind of has like that smirky smile while he's watching her.
Oh, we're looking at a naked body.
But fucking Brian, not even looking. He's just eating and surveying the horizon. Like I'm like, Jesus, man.
He's at that stage of the relationship.
Yep. And of course, fucking Anne is just staring off into the distance as the camera slowly pans in on her.
I was born on a boat.
Yeah, she seems like she was as born on a boat as much as I was fucking born on a boat, as in not at all.
And she's never gotten a wink of sleep since she's been born, apparently.
She's like, why am I not as famous as my sister?
Oh, because the one time I wanted to put you in a movie, but you said I creeped you out, and then I was like, why would I creep you out? I'm just a filmmaker from New York. I would never do anything remotely creepy like Pervert Peter over there. By the way, great name. Just don't tell anybody I said that.
Wow. As Mia Farrow's sister, yes, she must have spent a lot of time with Woody Allen as well. So, wow. That's a shame for her.
Look. People call you Pervert Peter. People just call me Woody because of the Woody in my pants when I get around beautiful women.
Because of the Matul in my pants.
Yes. So, but don't tell anybody. By the way, I have a secret compartment under the boat. You
know what's funny? I don't think I've ever seen a Woody Allen movie.
Oh man, Bananas is hilarious. Sleepers, hilarious. You would laugh your ass off with those two. Those are funny.
You said Sleepers, I immediately was like, Sneakers? He said Sleepers.
Yeah, Sleepers is hilarious. You know, the one where the Catholic priest it's Sleepers is from the 70s. It's not Sleepers with Kevin Bacon. It's the one in the 70s with Diane Keaton, and it's really funny. Those are two great ones, in my opinion.
Sleepers? Are you talking about Flatliners?
Nope.
Oh,
no, Sleepers was the one with Jason Patrick and Sean Penn and
I can picture it. I can picture the VHS cover. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I did not like
that movie. Yeah.
Sneakers, great movie though.
Sneakers, great movie.
You and I both love that one.
We love that movie.
While Susan is diving, Anne sees an island in the distance and points to it. Peter says they may be in luck. Who's to say that isn't Matul?
I was born on a boat. Look.
I was born on a boat.
Would you mind if I scoop that up and put it in a to-go bag? Woody Allen, what are you doing on this boat?
It's also the fact that when she says I was born on a boat, like she doesn't say it with confidence either. You know what I mean?
I was born on a boat.
Tissa. Oh, Tissa.
I think it's Tisa. I don't know.
I don't care.
Whatever. It doesn't matter.
I don't care.
I said Tisa in the intro, but
I don't care.
As long as you get my name correct. Pervert Peter.
Back underwater, Susan is exploring the beautiful coral reef when all of a sudden she spots a tiger shark pursuing her. She quickly hides in the reef, then once it passes by, she swims to the surface to alert Brian of the danger. "Brian, help! There's a shark!" He jumps to action and grabs his rifle. Susan says she's going back down and dives under the waves while a big dark spot in the water approaches her. Brian fires his rifle but doesn't hit the creature. The shark rams the boat, knocking everyone to the deck. Underwater, Susan again hides from the shark in part of the reef. This time, she's grabbed from behind by a submerged zombie. She rips off a piece of coral and rubs it in his face to blind the ghoul. As Susan makes her escape to the surface, the shark attacks the zombie and we get an epic shark versus zombie battle. The zombie bites the shark, ripping away a piece of its flesh. Then the shark eats the zombie's arm off. Back on the boat, Brian and Peter are helping Susan get her scuba gear off. She sits in the chair and Anne puts a blanket on her. Susan says that she was attacked by a man under the water. So, Zach, thoughts on the zombie versus shark scene?
It's the best part of the movie, in my opinion. It's the best part of the movie. It's so cool. Never been done since. Yeah, it's amazing.
Dude, the fact that they're using a tiger shark, which is one of the most aggressive sharks out there. I think a bull shark is a bit more aggressive. Now, the guy playing the zombie, I should call him out because he has a credit on here, so I'll do that right now. So the guy playing the zombie, Ramon Bravo, he was also the shark trainer. So he was obviously he can hold his breath. He could hold his breath for I think like a minute and a half to 2 minutes long. So of course they have scuba divers all around ready to give him air and oxygen and everything. And he did apparently feed the shark before they started filming, so that way it wouldn't be hungry, and doped it up with a little bit of a sedative. But what we have, the fact that he's literally wrestling it, he's literally biting it. Like he, as a person, is biting the shark. The shark, you can tell, the shark doesn't know what's happening. It's like, what the fuck's going on? Let me get away.
Poor shark. Poor shark.
Poor fucking shark. And to the point where he even shoves like a fake arm in the shark's mouth and it rips it off. Like, all of this is so amazing. And I still think in 2023, it looks spectacular because it's fucking real and it's no CGI whatsoever.
No, it's really lives up to the hype. People are like, "Oh, did you see the movie with the shark and the zombie?" It's really good. Yeah, it holds up. It tracks. It to this day, it's so good.
It's you're right. It lives up to the hype that people hear about it.
Yeah.
And I remember Jay Baruchel, is he pronounced his name? I think Jay Baruchel.
Oh yeah, the guy who talks like this. Yeah.
From Tropic Thunder. I love that part where he's talking about Blu-rays and everything, and fucking Robert Downey Jr. is like, "You talking to me this whole time?" I love that. So I actually like Jay Baruchel. I know I can see how he can annoy people, but I like his shtick.
I can't stand him.
I
can't stand that guy because he puts that affect on the way he talks sometimes.
Well, I did like in the movie This Is the End, he's wearing a shirt that says Shark versus Zombie on it. So
that was cool.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah.
That was cool. I didn't pull that one out myself. I wish I did but I'm not that cool. I'm not that cool. What are you talking about? Seth Rogen.
I like Jay Baruchel.
I know you do. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Was he in Superbad also?
It's what? Yeah. No. He wasn't in Superbad. No.
Okay.
He was in 40-Year-Old Virgin though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cut to a church on Matul. Yeah.
Can we get back to Pervert Peter?
Pervert Peter.
Yeah, can you keep talking about me, Jay Baruchel?
Nope, this will be the last we'll probably ever talk about Jay Baruchel. Here we go. We see a few goats roaming the dirt streets, and the wind is blowing hard, kicking up sand.
Beautiful.
You and I have both talked about it plenty of times, but let's just bring it up again. We both very much like wind in movies. So much so that Zach even broke down a movie called The Wind with Wings Hauser and Meg Foster.
That's right.
But this is one of those movies where I note the wind, I notice it, and I think it's cool, and it adds to that ominous feeling that the movie has.
Yeah, so desolate and depressing and dreary.
Even though it's juxtaposed with like a beautiful tropical location, it still manages to feel, like you said, depressed and empty.
Yep.
Inside the church, we see it's a makeshift hospital with about 10 people moaning and crying in their beds. Most of them are tied down. And I love the attention to detail on like every person who's dying in this movie. They've got like vomit on their pillows. They've got like vomit on their mouth. Like this is all makeup department. Like they had to add to this. But I think it adds to the grossness of the movie. Because like, in Dawn of the Dead, where we see Roger, die, but he doesn't like vomit everywhere and everything. He just sort of dies peacefully and then comes back to life, Whereas here, man, like this is an agonizing death and it takes days, and they have vomit on the fucking pillows and stuff. That's the kind of stuff that I'm like, oh man, this is a fucking rough way to go.
Yeah. The way it looks aesthetically is not a place you'd ever want to be.
No, it looks like fucking hell.
Yeah. Hell.
Dr. Menard's assistant, Nurse Clara, played by Stefania Diamario, leads the good doctor to one patient in particular. He examines the patient and says, "I don't think he'll last the morning." Clara asks what she should do. Maynard tells her to take him into the sacristy. I had to look that up. That is the room where the priest prepares for service. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Also probably the room where the priest does most of the molesting.
And gets serviced.
There you go. On his Matul.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt, but do you have room for one more in here? But don't tell anybody, please.
Oh, so fucking true. And guys and gals, you know our stance on organized religion, so don't be alarmed. He says he doesn't want to alarm the other patients. Menard tells Claire to tie him down securely. Just then, Lucas, we should have mentioned, he's played by an actor named Dakar. He busts through the church door. He excitedly says, "Everyone is leaving." Menard tells Lucas to calm down and takes him outside the church and away from the other patients. Lucas says that all the natives are leaving the village. What do they do? And he kind of has like a Jamaican accent that sort of comes and goes.
Yeah. But I like his character.
I do too. And also, I found it weird because he calls, the other people on the island natives. So I guess he's not from that island, but he also has an accent. I just kind of wish I knew how he got there. You know what I mean?
I feel like he's from he came over from the Dominican.
Okay. Oh, it's a good point. Maybe he came over from like where they came over from where Pervert Pete and, Brian and all them were and whatnot.
Yeah.
Okay. Good point. So
I think so.
He would refer to them as natives then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah. No, that works for me, man. Menard asks what happened, and Lucas says, "Here in Villa." Sorry, guys, I transcribed it, so there's gonna be sometimes it's his accent.
Yeah.
"Here in village is great trouble and commotion. It's the Juju man, the new one. He's speaking plenty. He seems to be possessed by all the devils in hell." Menard says that's ridiculous. Lucas goes on, "The natives are playing crazy. They run all over the village. They pick up their possessions. They disappear." Menard asks where they went. Lucas says they are going inland. "They're making voodoo, I think." The doctor says that voodoo won't solve anything. Lucas grabs his arm and says, "They're afraid. They're much afraid, these people." Menard looks at him and says, "You too. You're afraid, aren't you, Lucas?" Lucas looks down in shame. The two men walk down the beach as the wind picks up. We see through a POV shot that someone or something is watching them through the woods. We hear a heavy breathing coming from the thing watching. Now, knowing that this was supposed to be sort of a Island of Dr. Moreau scenario, like I think Lucas is kind of like that character, it sort of fits. I can see where the Moreau stuff is in this,
Yeah. There's an homage there for sure. where he's not deranged. He never comes across as being deranged. He just becomes across as like maybe obsessed and headstrong.
Yeah. And then Lucas, I can see him being that side character that, you know, I'm sure Dr. Moreau has as well and everything, you know.
Yeah, every doctor needs an assistant.
Yeah, exactly. Lucas is that short little dude.
My God.
Guys and gals, go listen to our discussion, our review of that documentary about the Richard Stanley, the doomed journey of Richard Stanley's Island of Dr. Moreau. We had a good time discussing that documentary.
We did. It's like feels unbelievable, but then they actually have video proof to show everything. So
right. Now I do like this because that last scene with the heavy breathing and the POV shot, it crossfades to the doctor's house at night and like basically crossfades into another POV shot with heavy breathing. So, you know, you can kind of tell that it's not the same person, but it's probably the same, like a zombie as well. Like you're getting that connection, you know. We see the gardener, aka manservant, and his dog sitting on the front steps. The dog growls and the gardener gets up to investigate. Don't ever see him again. He's probably dead. Inside, Mrs. Menard is taking a shower. Woohoo! I mean, Sleazy C is happy with this movie, dude.
It's long and drawn out. Both nude scenes.
Yeah, dude. Fulci's got no problem with that shit, man. We see a zombie hand press itself against the window, but she doesn't notice. Mrs. Maynard gets out of the shower and dries herself off. She grabs a prescription bottle and takes a pill from it, just like you said earlier. Just take your pills. Calm down, bitch.
I've got special pills in my pocket. Would you like to see them?
That sounds like a Woody Allen thing.
Well, he got them from me, actually. But I would like them back if you're not going to use them. But don't tell any. If you do use them, don't tell anybody where you got them from because he didn't get them from me. I'm going to go make my 40th movie and let Hollywood let me get away with everything.
That's Hollywood for you, baby. So she doesn't notice the zombie's hand. Prescription bottle. Okay. She puts on a nightgown and takes the pill with a glass of water. Just then, Mrs. Maynard hears a noise come from outside. I don't know if you noticed, but there's like 3 awesome like dolly shots in this. Like this is one where the camera's on her and she hears that noise and the camera kind of, it doesn't tilt, it dollies over, changing like the focal length. It's really cool. But then later, I like the couple shots they do with Brian in the shotgun where he kind of turns his head to see a zombie and the camera like dollies around. And when I say dolly, I mean it moves smoothly from left and right or forward and back. Now, in order to achieve something like that, they have to put down dolly tracks, actual little train tracks, you know, for the camera. It's worth noting these shots because low-budget films don't have a lot of camera movement in them. Camera movement, anytime there's camera movement, it's always more time, and time is money. Like, time to set up and time is money. So I noticed these shots because there's not a lot of movement in the movie because it's a low-budget film. And I think he uses these dolly shots very effectively.
Yeah, totally. I wrote that down, that this sequence, once she gets out of the shower and like walks over to the window too, where they, you know, it's clearly on a set, but the way the camera pans, really, really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, the inside house, I wouldn't be surprised if this was a set, the whole inside of the cottage thing.
Yeah.
So once she hears that noise, she walks over to the front door to investigate. Then she hears another sound come from another part of the house. She quickly walks back to the bedroom and closes the door. Just as she's about to lock it, something jiggles the handle from the other side. She presses her body against the door, but it's no use. A zombie hand slowly opens it. So yeah, this is probably my favorite scene in the entire movie. It's like a 6-minute scene between her getting out of the shower and ending where it's going to end, but the tension is so perfectly built up. And I love this shot here because you never heard like a window break in the main cottage area. She goes to her, it's like going to your bedroom door, and the moment you're about to shut it, something stops you, which means it just implies how close that zombie was to her in the first place. You know what I mean? That for me, that's that's the scary shit right there.
Yeah, it's creepy.
She eventually gets the door closed, cutting off the ghoul's fingers in the process. She leans against the door, but it starts to shake and the wood starts to splinter. So Zach, these aren't Venetian. What is it? So it's not a solid wood door, but it has those wood panels creating a bit of what do you call this? You know?
Cheap wood.
True. Okay.
I mean, shutter doors, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they kind of look like shutters, right?
Yeah.
Because it's air would flow through them and everything. Like it's not a solid piece of wood, and that's important to sort of know if you've never seen the movie to what's going to happen eventually.
Right.
Mrs. Maynard pushes a heavy dresser against the wooden door to block it. As she's leaning against the dresser, a horrible growl comes from behind the door, and a zombie's hand bursts through and grabs her by the hair. Mrs. Maynard screams as she tries to get away, but it's no use. The zombie slowly pulls her head closer until her eyeball is impaled on a large wooden splinter created when the creature punched through the door. Mrs. Maynard screams as she gets pulled through the opening, sans one eye. My description doesn't even touch the surface of how gruesome and amazing this shot is.
Yep.
Zach, how did you, when you saw this for the first time as a kid and shit, man, even watching it in 2023, man, it is so good. The effect on her eyeball is so good.
Yeah, because the way they shoot it, it goes into her eyeball, and then they cut to a different vantage point, so you see her the splinter rip off the door, and so it's still stuck in her eye, and then she gets pulled through and dies. So you're not only being killed by a zombie, but you're going through excruciating pain at the same time. You're welcome. You just had the shittiest death of your life. You're welcome.
It's one of the craziest kills in any movie ever, in film history, I think.
Yeah, and I think just everything just feels so painful. It looks so painful on screen, and that's what makes it even more hard. That's why it makes it harder to watch. And I'm a fan of less is more. This is not the case in Zombie.
That's a good point. I'm actually with you there. A lot of times, especially with monsters, not seeing the monster and everything. But here, what I think worked effectively, we never see the zombies. You only see the hand, and that's it.
Yeah.
But you do see in excruciating detail that splinter going into her eyeball, and it even she's screaming, and then the music and all the sound stops as the splinter goes in, just to sort of emphasize the horror of it and the effect. My God, this is a master class in gore and how to shoot an effect and everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, made in 1 month,
Yeah.
So here, this is, and I bring that up because it's while I feel I think we can agree, he kind of scoots by some things, but then he takes his time when it's important, and that's in scenes like this.
Yeah, he's don't worry, people aren't gonna care about they're not gonna care about the story. It's all gonna be okay. It's okay. They want to see the gore and the nudity. That's why they came to the popcorn. So give them the barf bag.
And famously, the trailer for this movie says that when you go see it, it comes with a barf bag because that's how they were building it up. So good reference there.
I have a Cannibal Ferox barf bag from back in the day.
I've never seen that movie, by the way.
You don't need to see that movie, by the way. Or Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah, however it's...
None of those movies. Just pass. Hard pass. Then there's Eli Roth. But if it wasn't for those movies, I wouldn't have made the Green... whatever movie.
The Green Inferno? Yeah. I didn't see that either.
I heard that was not good either.
Okay.
That's what Eli Roth does. He's he spends half the movie kind of stupid dialogue, and then the other half it's over the top, disgusting gore. Exploitation.
I'm not the biggest fan of Eli Roth. I did like Cabin Fever, but for the most part, I've said it before. I don't like torture porn stuff.
Yeah, porn stuff.
And I know that that's sort of a new phrase, but to me, Cannibal Holocaust seemed torture porny. I don't mind seeing someone get their eyeball like this ripped out. What I don't like is when someone's tied up and then they just get their head cut off or something. I don't like it when the person can't fight back. I think that's the thing.
Well, this is a little borderline on that. This is a little borderline gore-wise, but it's it's zombies. It's not like a guy doing it to people. You know what I mean? It's like it's a monster.
Right. Yeah, like when it's a person doing it and they're relishing it, like they're excited about it.
Yeah, like that's a snuff film.
Yeah,
shit.
That's when it gets kind of a little bit, nauseating.
A little snuffy.
Yeah.
I made a movie like that once. No, I don't care. Woody.
Woody. I like how you're like, because I didn't do the accent really well, so Woody. Just so you know. But I'm not going to go back and redo it. Just Woody.
Nope. Can I come back later? Sure.
We see another POV shot with heavy breathing on the beach. This time the person or thing is watching Brian's boat slowly creep to shore. We see Menard's assistant Clara walking through the abandoned village as the wind kicks up sand into her eyes. Goats and donkeys are walking around the streets too. Back on the boat, Peter is dropping in the anchor. Clara finds Dr. Menard sleeping by the ocean with an empty bottle of whiskey in his hands. She wakes him up and tells him about Mateus. Mateus, what? Say it. You're too afraid to say it, aren't you? She says she doesn't believe in voodoo. He says he doesn't either, but the natives here do, so we are investigating the phenomenon. Some of the dialogue's really weird. I mean, again.
I mean, it's not the best script.
Right.
But we get to where we need to get to, and when we get there, it's worth it.
I've seen them, and you've seen them. Now Mateus, he's one of them, isn't he? Clara just looks down. We have to help him. We have to try to help him. He stands up and tells them that they're going to the hospital. Back at the boat, Brian and Susan surface from below the water. She says that the drive shaft is cracked. It must have happened when the shark hit the boat. Peter asks if it's serious. Brian says, well, we have two possibilities. Either we go to shore and walk around until we come to the local repair shop, or we remain here and fire off a few flares and hope that somebody will come to help us. We'll have a tough time making it to the next island if we don't get that shaft fixed. Anne looks shocked. It's her natural state.
I was born on a boat. And meanwhile, Susan, does Susan not own a bikini? What's going on here? She does not own a swimsuit?
Her fucking G-string has as much fabric as a handkerchief, dude. And sometimes when she was swimming under the water during that zombie scene, I was like, I can see your butthole. Like, I can see it right there. And of course we're watching like the 4K 2018 restored edition and everything.
Or you can see everything.
Hey everybody, Corey here. I just wanted to let you know that we'll be right back after these short messages.
I'm John, and I'm the host of Action. Every week, I'm joined by James.
Heyo.
And Dustin.
Hello.
And each week, we review, debate, and rank a different action movie.
We're creating the ultimate list of action movies.
From awful to awesome.
So if you want to hear three more white guys with beards talk about action movies.
And argue about where they belong on our list.
And decide you hate us because we made fun of your favorite movie.
Join us every Tuesday, and you can find us on your favorite podcatcher.
And Steven Seagal is a joke.
Hello, everybody. I'm Adam.
I'm John.
And every week we are giving you a blast from our past.
We are the podcast that brings you full-on movie breakdowns, TV show reviews, album reviews, top 10s, and more, all from the things of our nostalgic past.
So please join us every single week on the Blast from Our Past podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts. However you listen to podcasts, you can find us, and we would love to have you take a trip with us to the land of nostalgia.
And now, back to the show. Cut to Dr. Menard and Clara standing next to the bed in the church's sacristy. There you go. I'll keep all of them in, guys.
Or Zachary.
There you go. Mateus's body is wrapped in a sheet and a rope tied around it. The good doctor has his pistol by his side. He says, "Poor Mateus," and quickly raises his pistol, looks away, takes a shot, then looks back. It's wild.
Yeah.
I do like what Fulci does in this movie. He does it frequently. There'd be like a build up, and then boom, the camera zooms in and the guy, raises the gun. I like when Fulci does that with the gun stuff. Does he do that also in his Western movies as well?
It's been a while since I've seen one. I'm just gonna say yes until people go, no, that's not what he did. I'm just going off of what I think.
But it is funny how he looks away, shoots, and then quickly looks back.
Yeah, I love it.
Back on the boat, Brian is firing off flares. On the island, Lucas stops digging a mass grave and looks up at the flare. When Dr. Menard and Clara walk over with the dead body of Mateus on a gurney, he rushes over to tell them that someone is firing rockets from the beach. Menard says he'll go to investigate. He tells Lucas and Clara to finish up with the body. Lucas and Clara roll the body into the mass grave with about 6 other corpses, all wrapped in white sheets and tied up, and with bullet holes in their heads. Lucas asks if he can bury them, but Clara says they have 2 more that will die soon.
And then he's like, "Me and you, you mean you and me?"
Yeah.
She's like, "What's wrong with you?"
You mean us? What?
No. Not yet.
And I do love in that scene where Menard and Clara kind of put the body down, and then Menard's like, "I'll go investigate," and then Clara and Lucas have to pick it up and then walk it literally 2 feet and then put it back down again.
Yeah.
It's like, why couldn't you have just put it there in the first place?
You're a dick.
Inside the church/hospital, a woman in bed is muttering to herself as she dies. She says, "I buried you, but I see you walking." She's covered in sweat and her pillow has blood and vomit on it. That's when I sort of... It's crazy. And she's missing some teeth and shit, but it's... Again, everything this movie does right, it really does right.
It's very gritty.
It is. It's gross. It's kind of that oozy, gritty gross.
Yeah, it's gross.
This is one of my favorite shots. Cut to a shot of the abandoned village, and one lone zombie is just slowly walking down the street.
So cool.
Yes. Cut to Dr. Menard driving our gang in his Land Rover. He says to Anne, "I met your father about 3 years ago when he first came out to these islands. Whenever he could, he would come and stay for a few weeks here with me on Matul. When he became a victim of the disease, he insisted upon staying, in spite of everything I said to him. I insisted that he should leave, but he wouldn't. He felt that he could, in some way, become a guinea pig, that he could help in discovering what was causing the horrors that were destroying our island, transforming it into a wasteland of terror. Extremely courageous man." He pauses, then goes on. "I remember the day when my assistant came to tell me that your father was dying." There you go. We see a flashback. There you go. Flashback music. Dr. Menard is sitting at his desk working when Clara bursts in to tell him his friend is dying. Maynard runs to see Anne's father in bed. The old man's breathing is heavy and labored, but he says to Maynard, "I feel I'm about to die. I had a good life, but I never thought it would end this way. I've got 2 things to ask. Listen carefully. I've written to my dear child Anne. The letter, see that it gets to her. And make sure that my soul rests in everlasting peace." That man dies.
Can we have one thing to say and then,
Nah. I got a whole paragraph. I need you to pay attention to all of this.
Right.
We hear a voiceover from Maynard. He says he spent a day watching over his body, but I knew that eventually I would have to find the courage to release him. We see Maynard cover the man's head in the sheet. The rest of the body is already covered and tied up. Maynard points the gun at his friend's head, but looks away. Just then, the body starts to slowly sit up. So Maynard quickly shoots it and says to Clara, "The boat can leave now. Tell the crew."
Yep.
So it's cool. I like that. I like that we get a full sort of, full circle. See the beginning and everything.
Callback. Yep. Yep.
Now, who do you believe here? Because the letter makes it sound like, he's like, "I am a guinea pig here," but then Maynard's version of it says that he volunteered to be a guinea pig. And of course, I think the flashback sort of tells you the truth, but like, who are you believing here? Are you believing the letter? Like, is Anne, does she think it's like, or do you believe Maynard that it was more of an honorable death,
Or do we believe that it's a major plot hole in the script?
That's the correct answer.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's true. I mean, some things we can talk about in-world stuff as to the cows come home, but at the end of the day, it's just kind of wonky script problems,
Right.
We see Dr. Maynard's Land Rover drive through the abandoned village with our group of friends. Anne asks what exactly was it her father died of? And the boat's crew, what happened to them? Pervert Peter chimes in and asks, what's all this about the dead coming back to life again and having to be killed a second time? Dr. Maynard says, have you ever heard of voodoo? Brian says, you've got to be joking. That's kid stuff. Voodoo's just plain superstitious horse shit. Basically, I love how he goes into this.
I know, and then he goes into the definition.
Yeah.
He's fucking Wikipedia right here.
He is. He's total Wikipedia.
The big brain on Brian over here.
There you go. Basically, it's a mixture of two religions. One, Catholicism, brought here by the Spanish conquistadores, and two,
conquistadores.
The voice guy definitely rolls the conquistadores. And two, African tribal rights that were brought here by the slave trade. Dr. Maynard says, well, whatever it is, it makes the dead stand up and walk. I've seen it with my own eyes. The natives say some evil witch doctor creates these zombies, but I'm sure there's a natural explanation, and I'm determined to find it. They pull up to the hospital church, and Lucas comes running out to tell Maynard that something has happened to Mr. Fritz. Anne asks if it's bad news. The doctor says, Fritz, a friend of mine, who happens to be the only other white man on the island, has had an accident. The funny thing is, later, when all those zombies bust through, there's so many white zombies in there.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, he's the only other white guy. Oh, we better rush to help him.
Yeah, that too. Of course.
Racist. Kind of racist, yeah.
1979 racism. Peter asks if there's anything they can do. Dr. Maynard says there is. His wife's alone at the cottage with only their manservant to look after her. He'd be grateful if they checked in on her. He gives them directions and sends them on their way while he checks on Fritz. The wind starts picking up and our friends take Dr. Maynard's Land Rover to go call on his wife.
My manservant is there.
Your manservant got eaten, by the way, I'm sure.
Yes. Yep.
Inside the hospital/church, Fritz is in bed moaning. Clara by his side. When Dr. Maynard enters the room, she says, I thought it was more advisable to bring him here. Maynard agrees and sits down next to Fritz and asks what happened to his arm. Fritz moans, one of the living dead. I saw it too late. Maynard asks where he saw the zombie. In the village. I saw it. Maynard asks intently, in this village? Yes. Maynard looks at Claire and says, tell Lucas to lock all the doors. But Fritz says it's a waste of time to lock the doors. They'll be here soon to destroy us all. Cut to a shot of a lone zombie walking through the village with his eyes closed. I love it. And this this one's cool. This zombie has like half his face is fucked up and shit. It's awesome.
Yeah, from one perspective, he looks one way. He's like Two-Face, and then he turns as his body, like the camera pans around him or whatever. It's so cool.
Yep, love that. Fucking love that. Never opens his eyes either, of course.
Nope.
We see Lucas frantically locking the door. Back in Dr. Maynard's Land Rover, Peter, Anne, Brian, and Susan are heading up the trail to check on the good doctor's wife at the cottage. As they get out of the vehicle, Brian says the doctor is doing quite well for himself when he sees the home. Peter says there's something fishy about him, though. That doesn't really pan out, I don't think. The whole fishiness.
No, well, I mean, it was a flaw, but maybe that was the Island of Dr. Moreau stuff you're talking about.
Yeah.
But they didn't follow through on that because the doctor never really has a moment where you're like, this guy's a bad guy. He's kind of like he's not as fleshed out as probably he could be.
Because my understanding, the first sort of drafts of the script when it was called Nightmare Island, I don't think there were zombies in it. I think it was all supposed to be sort of Island of Dr. Moreau homage type of stuff.
I see that. You can totally see that with this.
And I think when they retooled it, when the backstory, I mean, again, I'm not an authority, but my understanding is when Dawn of the Dead, came to, because Argento, he helped produce Dawn of the Dead as well, and he also kind of cut the Italian version, the international version of it, and brought Goblin in and everything. And actually, Dawn of the Dead got released in Italy before it got released in America. So the documentary that I watched on this speculated that, I mean, there was a time where, and Fulci would have been in these circles and everything, where Dawn of the Dead was like being passed around internally and people were talking about it. And Dawn of the Dead was a groundbreaking horror movie. And they quickly, my understanding is, once they sort of caught that, it wasn't out in the theater yet, but somebody watched it and, like in the editing room or whatever, and they retooled this script. And that's when they sort of changed it to Zombie 2. And I think that's when they changed it to Zombie Flesh Eaters. It only became Zombie 2 when it came out in the theater. But there's always this strong tie to Dawn of the Dead. And I think what we're seeing is, like with stuff here, I think we're seeing some of those remnants of the original script. When Peter says, he seems fishy to me, I think that's remnants left over from the original script of the movie.
Yeah, makes sense.
And again, like I said, I'm not an authority, guys and gals. I'm sure there is extensive, behind the scenes and documentaries on this movie and Fulci in general. If you like this, I highly recommend, go doing your own research and going down that path. That's kind of as far as I can take you now, is this. And Zach's like,
I was born on a boat.
I was born on a boat. I'm gonna shoot. They knock on the door, but get no response. Brian yells out for Mrs. Maynard. When they still get no reply, they walk in.
No reply at all.
It doesn't take them too long to discover her body, or what's left of it. Mrs. Maynard's corpse is being eaten by 4 zombies in the bedroom. The giant splinter is still sticking out of her eye. This is a gruesome scene.
Yeah, they're just chilling, having barbecue. Disgusting. It's super disgusting.
Eating her intestines and it's,
slowly.
Oh my God. I think it rivals anything in Dawn of the Dead, like eating of the body and stuff like that,
Totally. And they're not blue like they were in Dawn of the Dead.
Exactly. Never one of my favorite things was the blue zombies in Dawn of the Dead.
No, but I do love me some Flyboy.
Me too, buddy. Fuck, I'm not gonna lie to you. I love Flyboy, I love
zombie.
Raj, and everybody. I mean, that movie is still near and dear to my heart, but 9 times out of 10, I would choose to watch the remake over the original.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. One day, I have it in my head that one day I would like for us to cover them both back to back. Like maybe I break down the original, you break down the remake. We've never done that before, where we've never looked at an original versus a remake. I mean, we did with The Thing, but it wasn't really a remake. You know what I mean? The 2000.
It's not a remake. Yeah,
the 2011 one.
I know what you're saying.
So it'd be cool. It'd actually be really cool if we actually like kind of did the original versus the remake back to back. But I don't actually know if Dawn of the Dead's on Blu-ray, to be honest with you. So
the original one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have that DVD that came out with like 14 different versions of it,
I had that one too. Yeah, I had that. I mean, I don't have any more, but I did.
The big
back
box
in the day.
set.
Yeah. I had that on VHS, like with a cool shot of the gas mask from the side and everything. And it was a two VHS set and everything. I had that.
Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah. I still prefer the remake though. It's a hard ticket to Hawaii. Our friends back out of the room slowly, but 2 more zombies block their retreat. Brian and Peter grab spears and antlers off the wall and dispatch the 2 ghouls, and they all make a run for the Land Rover. Brian jumps in the driver's seat and tears ass up the road. In the car, Anne says, "My God, did my father become one of those?" Peter reassures her that he didn't. You heard the doctor. Let's just find the hospital and get the hell out of here as quickly as we can.
Let's go. But while we do, would you mind reaching into my pocket, please, and pulling out
my matool?
My matool.
I love how we're just devolving into catchphrases and music.
Yes. Meanwhile, the breakdown continues.
Yeah, of course.
This is what happens when Corey breaks down a movie, guys. I turn into a 12-year-old.
I love it, my friend. I love it. And I mean, we're barreling
drinking a Coke.
We're barreling to the end, man. We're like, we only have 5 pages left in my breakdown. Like, this is I told Zach offline, I was like, this was one of the fastest movies for me to break down, like, ever.
Yeah, because there's not a lot of dialogue. And then when there is, it all happens at once. And then there's these long breaks of just, exposition.
Yeah. This is the breakdown that I thought Them was going to be, and then Them turned out to be the most dialogue-heavy movie that I've ever broken down.
Them's the last time I do a movie like that.
Fucking last time I tackled something from the 50s. God damn.
Yep. Wow. Yeah, see? All we do is talk. Cover up the fact that we don't have a lot of special effects. Speaking of special effects, would you like to see the special effect in Matul?
There it is. There it is. Back in the hospital, we see Dr. Menard standing over another body wrapped in a white sheet and ropes. He puts a bullet through his head. I was like, is that Fritz? But it's not, because Fritz is going to come back later. The camera pulls back and we see 2 more dead bodies in the same condition lying on the floor. Dr. Menard looks defeated. Cut back to the Land Rover speeding down a grass road. A zombie walks out onto the path and Susan screams, "Look out!" Brian hits the creature and loses control of the vehicle, causing it to crash violently into a tree. Peter yells out in pain from the back seat. I didn't quite understand what happened to him.
First of all, his scream is like,
yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, my ankle is completely destroyed," or whatever he says, and you're like, how did you have it wedged under the seat or something, dude? What the fuck?
Yeah, you think like none of them's wearing seatbelts. You think like Susan or Brian's gonna go through the front window or something, but no, it's fucking pervert Peter in the back with his fucking ankle getting messed up in the back seat somehow.
Maybe he's trying to play footsie with Susan or something from behind.
Yeah, and she's fine, of course, Everyone gets out of the Land Rover. Brian checks the engine, but it's shot. Did you notice? Here's where I noticed it. Brian is wearing a Daily Planet t-shirt.
Yes, I wrote that down in my notes too.
Thank you, dude.
I'm like,
what?
Okay.
And it's the irony is he's not the reporter. Like Peter's the reporter. You think he would wear it, but Brian's wearing it, and it's also a Superman reference because the Daily Planet is where Clark Kent works.
I wonder if he's like, Peter. Yes. What can I do for you? Do you have a spare T-shirt? I haven't done the laundry.
He's like,
maybe
take my Daily Planet T-shirt. Here you go.
Right.
It's like it's weird, but I was like, and I paused and I was like, holy shit! I was like, is that a Daily Planet shirt?
Exactly.
Peter says his ankle is gone the same way as the engine, essentially. Brian asks if he thinks he can make it on foot back to the hospital. Peter says they don't have much choice. Brian grabs a gun from the truck and they start walking. As our friends walk along the beach and through like palm trees, we can hear drums and chanting in the distance. This is where I thought it was part of the movie score, but then you realize everyone can hear it too. Peter says the drums are getting closer. Susan yells, "I hate it! Damn you, you bastards!" Then throws herself into Brian's arms, sobbing. He says, "They're laying a little voodoo on us. It's got a sound all of its own." Peter thinks they should hurry up and get a move on. It's going to be dark soon. They start walking. I will say I'm never a fan of the excited females in these types of movies, and we don't see it that much anymore. But Susan in this scene, I can't take it anymore, and then she buries her head in her boyfriend's chest.
It's melodramatic.
It's so melodramatic. I'm glad, as sort of an art form, we've moved away from this sort of style of acting and whatnot.
Yeah, me too.
I grew up on fucking Aliens. Vasquez, fucking Ripley. Like, I do like to have my female characters have a bit more agency and strength behind them, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Makes them more interesting.
I like my women with, muscles.
I mean, I kind of do. Fucking Rhea Ripley, man. Oh my God, she's my new fucking hotness, bro. Oh, Rhea, baby, Rhea. Huh. Zach's like, I can't say anything. My wife is sitting right here. he's just smiling at me.
Pretty much.
Mine's asleep. Back in the hospital, Lucas puts a sheet over another expired patient and starts cleaning up. Dr. Menard, clearly at the end of his rope, asks, do you know what is the cause of all this? Is it voodoo? Lucas says, my father always say, when the earth spit out the dead, they will come back to suck the blood from the living. I guarantee you that line was added after the screenwriter saw a cut of Dawn of the Dead, you know?
Totally.
Maynard says that's just superstitious nonsense. Lucas looks at him and says, yes, you are right, Doctor. You know many more things than Lucas. Maynard shoots back, I don't believe that voodoo can bring the dead back to life. And Lucas not believe that the dead be dead. Cut to our friends slowly making their way through the jungle. Brian is on point with the rifle. Anne is helping Peter, and Susan is in the rear. Peter says he can't go any further. He has to rest for a minute. Anne helps him to the ground. Susan tells them to stay there, and she and Brian will go take a look ahead. Although I don't know why Susan has to carry her giant duffel bag. She could have just left it with, Peter and Anne as they go ahead.
Should have.
Susan and Brian don't walk too far before Brian sees something sticking out of the ground. He crouches down to examine it. It's a Spanish conquistador helmet.
Conquistador.
He does put on that flair whenever he says it.
You know that song from the 70s? Conquistador.
Probably, but
you know it.
Not off the top of my head.
I forget who sings it, but it's like it's a pretty popular band. Conquistador and burn. And you're like, what? This song's about a conquistador? It's a pop song? What the fuck?
I might have to. Did Harry Belafonte sing that? Fucking big rips to him, man. He just passed away today.
Rest in peace to Harry Belafonte.
Yeah, man.
He did not. No.
He did have a good run, though, because I think he was like 86 years old or something.
He did.
You're like, I am the authority, and he absolutely did.
Everyone knows. They know. Procol Harum,
Yeah, of course I know who they are.
Yeah, they do the lighter shade of pale. Lighter shade of pale.
Oh,
and the Big Chill.
Yeah.
You love your Big Chill.
Yeah. No, I know that one. I do know that one.
Here it comes.
I'm gonna have to cut this, otherwise we're gonna get flagged by Spotify.
Conquistador. Yeah. Anyways, if anyone's interested, because you can't play this on the thing, look up "Conquistador" by Procol Harum. It's the first song on their album from 1967. Oh my god!
Jesus, go from
this
the way
is gonna
back.
Be a top 40 hit. Let's sing about conquistadors.
1967. Jesus Christ.
Then Neil Young's like, I got one better for you. And he wrote a song about Cortez the Killer. Cortez the Killer. Spanish conquistador Cortez the Killer. Okay, back to the programming.
And this has been your old man music corner. Susan and Brian don't walk too far before Brian sees... Oh, it's the conquistador. Okay, we just said that.
Conquistador.
It's covered in mud and dirt. He says it must be over 400 years old. Susan looks around scared as the drumming and chanting continues. She slowly turns around and sees an old grave marker. Brian sees one too and says, "This must have been a cemetery for the Spanish conquistadores."
Conquistadors.
Cut back to Anne and Peter laying on the ground trying to catch their breath. Peter,
laying on the ground.
Yes.
Completely
chilling.
laying on the ground.
Fucking chilling like villains.
Why don't we look up at the stars and see if we can see? It's the daylight right now.
I was born on a boat. Peter says he's sorry he dragged her into this, but she says it's her father they came looking for. Anne says she's scared they won't make it off the island. Peter rolls over and kisses her, but he kind of goes, when he rolls her, he's like, he goes to kiss her, he's like, "Oh," he like makes like a noise, like almost like a zombie. It's not the most attractive kiss, but he does, and he's on top, she's on bottom as he's making out with her. That's gonna matter in a second. As they're making out, a zombie's hand slowly comes out of the ground and grabs Anne by the hair. She screams. Then another one comes out of the ground and grabs Peter's fucked up ankle and digs into the flesh. He screams too. Brian runs to their aid, leaving Susan behind in the other part of the cemetery. The camera stays on Susan as she watches in terror as a 400-year-old zombie slowly rises out of the ground next to her, then lunges forward and tears out her throat with his teeth. She falls over screaming and gurgling as she dies. Her white shirt is now completely stained red. I always thought this scene was hit or miss. Like, why don't you run? Why doesn't Susan run? There's enough time, but at the same time...
Frozen in fear.
Okay, yeah, and I get that. Okay, fine. But the payoff is pretty awesome because the throat rip, he rips out her jugular, and I love the fact that her white top is now just 100% red.
Yeah. I think this zombie is the one that's on the cover of the box, right?
Yep.
And when it lunges, that's a famous scene, of course. It's an infamous scene. I honestly wished that Anne, when the zombie grabbed her hair, it would rip her scalp off her head.
Dude, every time I watch it...
Well, you really hate her, don't you? No, it just would have been more effective if she died right then and there.
Dude, every time I watch it, it's what I think is going to happen, and when it doesn't happen, I am 100% disappointed.
Yeah, I think they would do this with a supporting actor, and not the lead.
Yeah,
any time, hands down.
Exactly, and I would have much rather have had Susan survive than Tisa.
Yeah, Susan, who looks like Aaron, what's her face from Happy Days, when she chopped her hair off, Joni.
Yeah, and she had her hair is so curly and everything.
She gets that because Joni chopped her hair off and got a perm.
Yeah,
when later seasons of Happy Days.
Is it that? And then they spun off Joni Loves Chachi, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which in Korean is penis. Penis. Apparently.
Doesn't Happy Days have like 7 spin-offs and like Mork and Mindy was fucking one of them?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. I used to watch Happy Days when I was a kid, but that's like one of those shows where I don't even know if it's like rerun streaming like anywhere or if you just find it on the new, like whatever the Nick at Night is now. There's, I know there's a channel that just plays all those old Nick at Night shows now, like TV Land or something. Is that the only place you can really find Happy Days these days?
I think so. Yeah, because there was like cartoons and other spinoffs. Yeah, tons of spinoffs.
Oh, that's right. There was a fucking Happy Days cartoon, wasn't there?
Yeah, I think so.
Damn.
Filmation, I think, put it out.
Damn, I remember that shit. Just like the old Star Trek cartoon, too.
Oh, that's the bomb.
I fucking love that Star Trek cartoon, by the way.
I like it more than the TV series.
I do, too.
Conquistador.
Brian runs back to help her, but it's too late. He shoots the zombie twice in the back. It slowly turns around with Susan's flesh still in its mouth. That's cool. Peter grabs a wooden grave marker and knocks the ghoul over, then smashes its head in. Brian walks over to Susan and holds her. Peter says they have to leave before it's too late. Brian says they can't leave her here all alone, but Anne says she's dead. Peter says there's nothing they can do for her now and helps Brian to his feet. Come on, man, let's go. As they walk out of the cemetery, more zombies start to slowly rise from the dirt. And I love this shot because literally it starts happening like a second after they leave. So if they did stay, it would have been bad for them. But I love how slowly all of them rise up. And again, I am reminded of Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things when they all sort of rise up too. And then, you know, that movie has like, it's not voodoo, that's Satanism, this is voodoo, but still you could say they're together because they're like, it's like a supernatural spin.
It's
on
magic.
Yeah, it's magic and everything. So I like this shot. I like this scene. I think it's super eerie. It's even eerie in the fact that there's one shot at the beginning before like all the zombies start raising up where like I think one of the actors, Brian or Pete or whatever, like steps on a piece of ground as they're walking away. But like an actor, like a zombie actor was actually under that ground and then just starts coming up behind, like after they step away. So effective, dude.
Yeah, it's so cool. And reminds me of Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things also.
But as one of the other notable kills, I think Susan's kill is really great. How did that one affect you as a kid?
Oh, it's still disturbing. I mean, I know it's just makeup now, but still, it's really gross. Anything where you see the skin getting stretched out and ripped off, it's like, oh God, it's shudders.
And, you know, watching this in 2023, and I know we both have the head for putting it back into place, back into like where it was, I still think the effects actually look really fucking good.
Oh yeah, it looks great. It totally looks great. Totally looks great.
And even the blood is sort of that fake red that it is. It all works together, you know?
I don't mind it.
No, me neither. I don't. So cut to more zombies slowly walking through the village as the wind kicks up sand and dirt. Cut back to and things are going to start getting fast now, guys. Cut back to our friends in the jungle. It's now nighttime. Peter falls to the ground yelling. He can't go on. And can't go on. Come on, man.
Please.
And this also reminds me of the shot in Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things where they're getting to the house, but there's the zombies like in the distance in the background and everything.
I mean, come on. Everybody who's like, it's not a very good movie, or it's passable. I give it a second opinion. Watch it again, because I'm telling you, if that movie hadn't come out, zombies on an island, hello.
I think that's a good double feature. Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things and Zombie is a great double feature. I think it's
fantastic, yeah.
Yeah.
And the zombies get on a boat at the end of the movie and head back to the shore, to the mainland, the big city.
We're back, baby!
Back in the New York groove.
So, yeah, like I said, cut back to our friends in the jungle. It's nighttime now. So Peter falls to the ground. He's yelling he can't go on, but we see zombies approaching them from behind. They see the hospital/church in the distance and make their way to it. Inside the church, Dr. Maynard is examining a patient. He says to Clara that the man is fading, and there's no use for a blood transfusion now. He's going to die anyways. Suddenly, he hears Anne and Brian banging on the door, and he runs to unlock it. We see a bunch of figures slowly creeping through the darkness behind them. Once inside and the door is locked again, Peter tells them that the dead are coming back to life. They're everywhere, man! We see a close-up shot of a cross-eyed zombie. Probably my least favorite zombie because the eyes are open, but this is only like one of two zombie whose eyes are actually open. I actually like the other one, and I'll call that one out when I can.
It's disturbing.
It is. Inside, Brian is boarding up all the windows while Dr. Maynard examines the massive gash in Peter's ankle. He's just straight up like sticking a full cotton ball in the open wound. It's horrible. Maynard asks him, "What about my wife?" Peter looks at him but doesn't say anything. The doctor knows. Brian finishes putting boxes in front of the window, then walks over to Maynard. What the hell are they, Doctor? Maynard says, I don't know. It all started about 3 months ago. One of the fishermen said he'd seen his wife walking in the village at night. Only she'd been dead for 2 days. At the time, nobody believed the story. In these islands, fantastic legends, voodooism, zombie, have been rife for centuries. Outside, we see more zombies slowly approaching the church as drums and chanting continue, and the wind blows harder. Back inside, Dr. Maynard continues talking. As a man of science, I don't believe in voodooism, but the phenomenon defies logical explanation. We see Clara put a sheet over the patient they said was going to die soon. Maynard goes on, I've attempted to apply the disciplines of bacteriology, virology, even of radiology. We've performed tests, epilepsy, and for catalepsy. Nothing fits. Just then they hear zombies banging on the front door of the church. Brian checks the barrier, then asks Maynard if it will hold them. Not a chance. Great bedside manner. He just doesn't even.
We're all gonna die.
It's like, no, we're dead, motherfuckers.
Well, save yourselves. We're all gonna die.
Run, bitches, run.
Hey, Polly, how'd we get in here? Shipwreck. Let's go.
Good one.
Batten down the hatches. It's time to go.
My least favorite G.I. Joe character.
I love me some Shipwreck.
I know you do.
And knowing is half the battle.
There you go. Brian asks how they're going to stop the zombies. Maynard gives Peter his pistol and says he has another one in his office. As he's walking there, he tells Brian there are 2 drums of kerosene in the sacristy. Brian tells Peter and Ann to stay where they are and to watch the windows, and goes to retrieve the drums with Nurse Clara. He tells her to grab as many empty bottles as she can find. We see a zombie start climbing through the window, and Peter, now out of bed, smashes it in the face with a shovel. The zombie spews blood from his face and slumps over. Peter bashes his brains out, then closes the window. Low key, this was probably one of the better zombie kills, man.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Because I also love how he smashes the zombie. Like, the zombie gets hit in the face, and it's like, I'm already dead. He's like, I'm fucking dead. And then fucking knocks his brains out. It's kind of like overkill.
Yeah.
We see more and more zombies gathering outside the church. In the sacristy, Brian, Lucas, and Clara are making Molotov cocktails while Dr. Maynard is loading the shotgun in his office. He goes to join the rest of the group, and all of a sudden, Zombie Fritz jumps out of the shadows and takes a huge bite out of Maynard's face. Brian hears him screaming and goes to help, leaving Lucas and Clara to finish the Molotov cocktails. Brian enters the doctor's office and finds Fritz eating Maynard's face as he lay dead on the ground. I was like, every time I watch this, I'm always shocked that's how quickly and sort of like, I don't see it coming, how quickly Maynard dies.
Yeah. One bite, dead.
It's a big fucking bite, bro.
I mean, come on.
You're like, you could survive that. Come on.
Come on. That guy needs a jump to conclusions, Matt. No, I'm kidding.
Zombie Fritz slowly rises to his feet. His face and mouth are covered with the doctor's blood. I do like, by the way, with the zombies, they don't like kind of like eat. They sort of eat you, but they also kind of just. I get all right. What I do like is I like the flesh hanging out of their mouth all the time.
Ugh, yeah, me too.
It's gross.
Yeah, it's gross. Effective.
Mm-hmm. Brian shoots him in the heart, but nothing happens. Fritz slowly walks towards him with his eyes closed. Brian shoots again and blows the ghoul's brains out. Fritz falls over dead. Brian checks on Maynard, but it's too late.
Grabs Maynard's shotgun, though. That badass shotgun.
Fuck yeah, he does. Back in the sacristy, a zombie slowly and quietly rises up from the bed it was on and out of the sheets it was wrapped in. Lucas doesn't notice until it's too late. The creature takes a huge bite out of his arm while his back is turned. And dude, I mean, he bites down to the bone.
Yeah, yeah.
Lucas screams in pain and slumps down while Clara watches helplessly. Now more of the patients turned zombies are rising up from their beds and coming towards her. She finally screams and Brian goes running to help her with both his rifle and Dr. Maynard's shotgun. Before he can get to Clara, he sees a zombie slowly coming through one of the windows. He aims his shotgun, and this is the zombie. I like it. He shoots first, kind of hits the window and stuff, and then the zombie, I like the zombie. It's a fake head because it's going to explode, but I like that it has an eyeball because this zombie feels evil and menacing. Like he's looking at Brian like, fuck, did you just do?
Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite zombies. It's very creepy looking.
And he's kind of lifting the thing up with his head too.
Yeah. It's a dummy, but it's a cool looking one.
Yeah, it is. And the eyeball makes it sinister. But this time his aim is true. He explodes the zombie's head, but also destroys the window barrier as well, you know?
Oops.
Brian goes to Claire's aid and shoots down the zombies advancing on her. He grabs some of the Molotov cocktails and tells her to grab some too. I love how he just doesn't wait for her. He runs back to Peter and Anne, but Clara gets attacked and killed by zombie Lucas before she can meet up. Oh, Clara.
She had her moment,
she
she blew it.
She did. Outside, a horde of zombies are trying to get in the front door of the church. Inside, Brian, Peter, and Anne are all set to make their last stand as they aim their guns at the front door behind a makeshift barricade. Brian tells Anne to get some more bottles, but when she goes back, she's stopped by zombie Lucas. Anne screams, and Peter turns around and shoots Lucas in the head. And she does the thing that I fucking hate in these movies where she just goes, ah, she screams and turns towards the camera, you know?
Yeah, so dramatic.
Ugh.
I'm born on a boat.
I was born on a boat. Dude, I wish she got her scalp ripped off in the
I know, it would have been amazing.
Yeah.
She can sign autographs with that 8x10 photo of her getting her head ripped off.
That would have been so much better. Now the zombies are coming through the front door. Lots of white zombie actors when the only two white people on the island were Maynard and Fritz.
Lots of rafter beams falling too. This is really funny.
Yeah, this is. I mean, so as the ghouls slowly make their way inside the church, Brian and Peter throw Molotov cocktails at them, catching the church on fire. Our friends now start shooting the zombies as they come in through the front door and through the windows. Some are even rising up from the hospital beds. It's pretty much 3 versus the whole village at this point, which is really fucking cool. The battle rages on for quite some time until the front of the church collapses due to fire. So that's my summary of the event, but this scene takes 2 or 3 minutes, maybe even 4, just pure action, just shooting and killing zombies.
Yeah, it's really cool because it just keeps going and on and on and on. It's a great melee massacre moment. But what's funny about it is the beams and on the roof are just falling in just too many beams that actually probably existed on the roof.
Right.
They just keep one beam after another. So I'm imagining a crew above just throwing one beam after. Keep going. This is great. It looks great. But there's 30 beam. I'm exaggerating. There's 10 beams on the ground, and then it's cliche at this point. But they're not reloading, they're unloading all these bullets. I'm totally okay with all of this because it's so much fun.
Yeah.
And it's the finale of the film, there's literally 2 minutes left in the movie.
Yeah. There's not much time at all left, and this is the big climax, and it's a great payoff. There's a lot of zombies on fire. There's a lot of great effects. Zombies are getting crushed and everything. It's awesome, man. They're doing some really good shit in this movie. Again, made in a month and edited and produced and sent out in 2 months after that. Boom,
They don't make movies like that anymore because if a movie was made in a month now, you'd be like, oh, this movie sucks. But this does not.
That movie would go straight to Netflix at that point.
I was going to joke that it would star Bruce Willis, but you can't joke that way anymore.
Yeah,
Poor guy.
Poor. R.I.P. Bruce Willis's mind.
R.I.P. Bruno.
Yeah. Brian and Peter and Anne run out of the main room and into Maynard's office. The guys lock the door, and Anne turns around and gasps. There are 4 zombies in there with them. Brian bashes a few of their faces in, and they run past the rest into the night. Once outside, they have to fight a few more zombies to be free. They easily dispatch them. Brian leads the retreat, but unfortunately, he runs face first into Zombie Susan. I love this. I love the look, how she looks.
Yeah. But Brian is the heart of this movie.
Yeah.
He's the only one, I think, that really truly does the most out of everybody.
Yeah.
And well, keep going.
He looks at her as she slowly walks up to him and bites a chunk out of his arm.
No! Saddest moment in the movie. Saddest moment in the movie.
Agreed. And just like with Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, the person who we sort of connected with the most goes running off into the darkness and dies, you know?
Yep.
There's a lot of similarities. Guys and gals, really hope you also listen to the Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things review as well as this one. And also, more so, go watch them back to back. There are so many connections and similarities. Brian screams and yells for Peter to shoot her. Shoot her! Shoot her! That's my Jurassic Park. Which he does.
Clever girl.
There you go.
For reference from Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, not Jurassic Park.
Boom. Peter shoots her right in the brain. Peter helps Brian to his feet. Let's get to the boat. You can make it. As they are making their way through the jungle, they hear the church explode and look back. It's now completely engulfed in fire. Crossfade to the next morning, and we see Peter, Brian, and Anne on the boat. Brian is driving, and he looks like fucking death. Anne asks if they can go any faster, but Brian says that the drive shaft could go any second. They'll make it to another island and get it fixed there. As Brian is talking, he slumps over the wheel. Peter helps him up. Brian says he feels cold. He tells Peter and Anne that he doesn't want to become like the monsters on the island. He tells Peter to save him. Then he passes out again.
Too late.
They move Brian down to the cabin below, and Anne watches over him as he dies. His death scene is sad to me, man, because it looks horrible. It looks like he's terrified,
because he's the only guy he's the coolest guy in the movie. That's why it's sad.
Yeah.
You know, just like what's his face in Dawn of the Dead, the outside of Ken Foree, Raj.
Raj, yeah.
But Raj he was a little hot. He had a little Napoleon complex going on. So
I like Brian better than Raj.
Flyboy?
No, I like Brian here in this movie better than Roger in Dawn of the Dead.
Me too. I'm just saying, they had one guy who got attacked by a zombie and had a stretched out death.
Yeah.
Poor Bri. Poor Bri.
Yeah.
Poor Brett Hull.
Who? She
wow.
goes...
all these fucking keyboard, warriors. You don't know who? He was the captain of the St. Louis Blues hockey team.
Just know that every time Zach says that guy's name, I think of that scene from Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm Star-Lord. Who? That's literally who is always in my head.
I guarantee you Lee Germaini's going to be like, okay, you want to know who Brett Hull is? This is Brett Hull. Because Lee knows hockey.
Sure.
Come
I'm
on,
sure
Lee.
he does.
Shout out to
the only
our boy
hockey
Lee.
I know is from NHL, I think 96. I played NHL 96 a shit ton, and I used the Chicago Blackhawks. That was my team, I think.
Is that the one in Swingers when they're playing and he knocks him out? And he's like, oh, I love that scene in Swingers when they're playing the NHL video game.
So I know I didn't buy NHL because of it, but I did enjoy it. Like that was like one of the few sports games that I liked was
That
NHL
game was
hockey.
fun.
But I played as the Chicago Blackhawks because I know that was the character Trent's favorite team in Swingers. So it was right around the same time. So
And his
like,
brother played the Kings, right? His brother played the Kings.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Little insight into our minds.
And then the pizza guy shows up. Is he clean? Is he clean, Michael?
I love it. Swingers. She goes back to Peter, who's now driving the boat. She be driving it since she was born on it. You fuck.
I was born on a boat.
And she tells them that Brian is dead. She asks, what do they do now? Because, of course, she's going to have no ideas of her own. Peter says, lock him in the bilge. Take him back with us to the States. Someone there might be able to do something. Anne protests, but Peter says they have to bring him back. Brian is the only proof they have that all this happened. Otherwise, they'll just think they're crazy. Anne says she feels dead. I feel dead. We see a slight time
and I'm
jump.
like, you should. You look it.
I know. We see a slight time jump, and the boat is further out at sea, but still moving slowly. Peter turns on the radio, and the broadcast is grim.
But doesn't he say, let's turn on some music to get our minds off this?
He might have said
something like that.
Yeah.
Doopy doopy doo. We've got a dead body. Let's turn on some yacht rock radio. Conquistador. Yeah, I like this song by Procol Harum.
I like my hair, dude. His hair looked terrible in this scene. If I were the actor, I would have demanded a reshoot of this scene.
Do you know what Peter O'Toole looked like in Lawrence of Arabia? Yeah, you're not Peter O'Toole. This is not Lawrence of Arabia. Okay, good point. But anyways.
But my hair.
Make it look like Ted Danson in the final season of Cheers.
So the broadcast is grim, and it says, the situation here in New York since the discovery of the first zombie is getting worse by the hour. There's chaos in the streets. The National Guard cannot control the situation. In every borough of the city, from Manhattan to Brooklyn, from Harlem to Queens, the zombies are taken over. The governor has declared a state of national emergency and asked the president for immediate assistance. As the broadcast plays, Peter and Anne look at each other. You can hear Brian trying to get out of the bilge below. The broadcast continues as we see zombies walking down the Brooklyn Bridge. The zombies are everywhere. There seems to be no way to stop them. According to the latest reports from police headquarters, the inhuman creatures are gathering and seem to be heading towards Central Park. Barricades have been thrown up throughout Manhattan. General Steiner of the National Guard says missiles will be used if necessary. I've just been informed that zombies have entered the building. They're at the door. They're coming in. Ah! The newscaster screams. Credits play over the shot of the zombies walking across the Brooklyn Bridge towards Manhattan. The end.
Dum, 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 dum.
So,
Conquistador.
So, warts and all, this is a fun movie, man. Final thoughts, my friend?
It's great. It's great. It's great. It's a classic. It's a classic. It's good. I mean, everybody that there's for every little scene that you can laugh at or goof on, there's a million others that are fantastic and you know, keep you at the edge of your seat. I love it. I still love it. It's been a while since I don't know. I think I saw it actually at the Aero Theater in Santa Monica a few years back. Yeah, it still holds up today.
It really does, man. Like, I'm not going to lie. I think probably what is the weakest is the script, but everything else, the craftsmanship of the rest of the movie is just spectacular. You know, 2023, man, a lot of the effects still look great. The eyeball, splinter to the eyeball scene is still so effective. The zombie versus shark, like, I can understand why you think why a person would think it'd be silly or whatever, but I'm watching it just from a sheer technical standpoint.
Yes,
and I'm
too.
like, what the fuck? Like, how the fuck? No one's even attempted to film something like this again, you know?
I appreciate it more now than I did way back when.
And that's how I felt watching it here. I appreciated the zombie versus shark scene more just because of like just the sheer technicality of it. But I also appreciated the splinter to the eye because I appreciated the buildup. I appreciated what Fulci did with that scene and build it up. And yeah, you can kind of like in Scanners, you can watch the head explosion as a standalone effect, but it's much more effective if you watch it in the context of the scene and the build up to it. It's a whole new level. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a perfect example because Scanners, that one scene in Scanners does not do the film justice, just like this one scene in Zombie does not do the film justice. So take it as a whole.
Exactly. So I had a great time with this one, man. I very much enjoyed it. I'm glad we finally brought, an Italian horror movie. This will not be the last one. I'm sure we'll see more.
It's not my first. Won't be my last.
It won't be, baby. And I know what's coming next, but guys and gals, you'll have to wait for Wrap Up After Dark to find out what Zak's bringing to the table. But there is a connection, in some themes and maybe some effects and everything. So it'll be a fun one. Definitely looking forward to it. But Zak, until then, what's going on with $2 late fee? I know you're going to be dropping a new episode of Territory Marks, I think, soon, right? This weekend?
Yeah. By the time this airs, the latest episode of Territory Marks is up. Another great episode with me and pro wrestler Paul London, formerly of WWE. We talk about a rivalry between Jerry Lawler and Terry Funk, and then Magnum TA and Nikita Koloff. So before Jerry Lawler got put on the map, thanks to Andy Kaufman, he and Terry Funk had one hell of a rivalry, and we talk about 1/2 specific matches that we had to really cover both of them because they connect. One being a first of its kind. And then Magnum TA he got his nickname from Andre the Giant because he looked a little like Magnum PI.
Yeah.
So Andre told him, he's like, you call yourself Magnum, and because you have mustache, and instead of, his name's Terry Allen, he's like, call yourself Magnum TA. That's how he got the nickname. Versus Nikita Koloff, the Russian Nightmare. The Russian Nightmare was from Minnesota, but, had a great bad Russian accent. And, man, they had one hell of a match as well, and a huge rivalry, too. Anyways, that's on Territory Marks.
And Territory Marks, if you're a first-time listener, can be found on the $2 late fee feed. It's kind of like how we do TV Obscura here as a spin-off show, a monthly spin-off show. Territory Marks is similar in that it lives on the $2 late fee feed as well.
Yeah, it's a monthly spin-off show from $2 late fee. The $2 late fee umbrella is slightly expanding once a month.
Yeah, there you did. We're fucking Pat and $2 late fee are both growing, my man, which makes you a very busy person.
I know. This week alone, I'm in the middle of doing a lot, but it's all good.
Fucking once you start producing content, baby, there's no end. And one thing that let's see, you and I just recently recorded our In the Mouth of Madness review for the Carpenter Factor, but that episode will probably drop by the time you listen to this in a few weeks. It'll drop next month. But we had fun with that one, so go check out the Carpenter Factor on the Podcasting After Dark Patreon page. This month, the one that's currently up right now is Body Bags, and I gotta say, yeah, In the Mouth of Madness is definitely better than Body Bags, but might not be as good as I had wanted it to be. So
yeah, you'll just have to listen. Sign up to our Patreon, patreon.com/$2 late fee for patreon.com/podcasting after dark to find out more about that. If you're already a patron, thank you guys. We love you. If you're not a patron, We'll love you when you become a patron. Just kidding. Just kidding.
We love you anyways.
We love you anyways. We love you for listening and subscribing and giving us 5 stars and giving us a positive review and yada, 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 all that good stuff.
Exactly. And yeah, if you can't join Patreon, we totally understand. Times are tough. A free way to help out our show, $2 late fee, or any other podcast you listen to. Leave us, them, anybody else, a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else you can leave reviews. Just, if you're listening to my voice right now, just leave any podcast you listen to a review and spread the love, because everyone's out here trying to produce content and you know, make everyone's lives a little bit easier on the day-to-day. So thank you all so much for the love and support you've given us this entire time. We're barreling towards our 4-year anniversary, and this has been a blast every single fucking week. So thank you all. And as always,
this is Peter, and we'll catch you on the dark side with a conquistador. Be sure to subscribe to Podcasting After Dark and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. Support Podcasting After Dark on Patreon. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Podcasting After Dark. And visit us next time for another installment of Podcasting After Dark with Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer.
Imagine being one of the last people on Earth, being trapped alone with something not human, something always watching, something always waiting. What would you do? Where would you run? Where would you hide if you were haunted for 7 winters alone?
Podcasting After Dark presents 7 Winters Alone, a dystopian haunted house story by David Irons.
Available now in paperback and ebook.